the status of Muggleborns. We are treated like low-class citizens by the majority of purebloods, said Dudley. Petunia shrieked. Vernon became angry and the Grangers literally wanted their daughter to stop studying at Hogwarts and return to being a Muggle. But before they could say anything, Dudley continued. Luckily, those purebloods make up only 10% of the total population in Britain, revealed Dudley. What? Only 10%? Not only the Dursleys and Grangers, but even Sirius and Susan were dumbfounded by what Dudley said. Yeah, the total magical population in Britain is around 3,000 people, Dudley said confidently. As someone who had read an interview with J.K. Rowling, he knew well that the total population of wizards in Britain was only 3,000. 10% are purebloods, 30% are Muggleborns, and the remaining 60% are half-bloods, Dudley explained. So only 300 wizards are purebloods and the rest aren't. Half-bloods outnumber Muggleborns 2 to 1 because it is the child of Muggleborns, making those children half-bloods. We. Dr. Granger tried to say something, but no words came out. Suddenly, Petunia started crying. She still remembered how jealous she had been of her sister, Lily Evans. But little did she know her sister had actually been treated like a second-class citizen. Seeing his mother cry, Dudley pressed on. 20 years ago, the status of Muggleborns was at the bottom. They were treated like trash and playthings. There was also a group of criminals called Death Eaters who would attack the families of Muggleborns, Dudley explained. What's that? Asked Dr. Granger. Hermione looked furious. She hadn't told her parents about the Death Eaters because she didn't want them to be angry or stop her from going to Hogwarts. Now, the status of Muggleborns has improved and I believe that if we give it 10 to 20 more years, Muggleborns will eventually become much stronger, Dudley said, remembering how in the future, technology would become so advanced there would even be Starlink with 10,000 satellites. But now, in the 1990s, technology was still backward compared to his time. What do you mean by much stronger? Asked Susan, curious. In our non-magical community, they teach us subjects like mathematics and science. Do you know how difficult it is to do calculus and algebra? Dudley asked. No, I don't, replied Susan. It's very difficult, and I believe wizards who learn and master these two subjects could even surpass Dumbledore, Dudley said. Let's get married. Because of what Dudley talked about, the party for Sirius Black became a bit dull. Everyone was trying to digest what he had said while eating their food. Petunia kept recalling her hatred towards her sister. She had always thought being a wizard was everything, but after learning what her sister went through at school, she began to feel guilty. Dr. Granger wanted Hermione to stop working there, but since she only had 3 years left, he allowed her to finish her studies. The person most affected was Susan, who kept staring at Dudley. Why are you looking at me? Asked Dudley. Is it true, what you claimed about first generation or new bloods helping the magical community? Asked Susan. 90% correct, Dudley replied, but the other 10% I need to confirm by marrying a pure blood to see if my theory is right or not. Then, Dudley looked at her. Will you marry me? Susan, still processing the information, suddenly realized, did this man just casually propose to me? Her face flushed, and she grew angry. You, she shouted, grabbing a plate, ready to smack Dudley. Wait, I was just suggesting it. Why are you trying to hit me? Dudley shouted, attempting to escape. The party, which had been dull, finally became more lively and cheerful. Is this how you propose to a woman? Susan demanded, still holding the plate, prepared to smack Dudley. I'm sorry. I thought you'd agree, Dudley replied, covering his face. What did you say? Susan asked, suddenly becoming very intimidating. I thought you'd agree. We could even have 5. No, 10. No, that's too few. Let's say 20 children. Dudley said, just before Susan finally smacked him. Creaker. When Dudley woke up from his faint after being hit by Susan, he finally remembered what he had said before passing out. He had done it because the atmosphere was too dull, and besides, Susan Bones was a very beautiful witch, much like her aunt. Marrying her would be a bonus. She was beautiful, smart, and rich. He would be the luckiest man alive if he married her. Plus, Susan had the status of a pure blood, which might help him if he wanted to enter the Ministry of Magic. It was a half-true proposal because on one hand, he did want to marry her, but on the other hand, it seemed risky. "Are you okay?" asked Sirius Black. "Where am I?" Dudley looked around, noticing the room was decorated in red. "This is my room," replied Sirius, struggling to hold back his laughter. "Ha ha 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 ha! You're laughing at me?" Dudley asked. "It was too funny." "You're even worse than James," Sirius said, still trying to hold back his laughter. "Ha ha ha ha! At least I'm better than you, a single dog for years," Dudley shot back. "Ha ha 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 ha, well, at least I had many girlfriends," Sirius replied. "I also had many girlfriends," Dudley said confidently. "You did?" Sirius asked. "Yeah, I had many friends," Dudley declared. It took Sirius a few seconds to catch the word friends. Before Sirius could respond, Creaker suddenly appeared with a tray. "This is for Master Dudley," Creaker said respectfully. Sirius, staring at Creaker's polite behavior, didn't know if his eyes were playing tricks on him or if his brain had been broken. "Am I seeing this right? I'm not dreaming, am I?" Sirius asked, uncertain. Dudley seized the moment and pinched Sirius with all his strength. "Ouch! What was that for?" Sirius exclaimed, snapping out of his daze. "Just helping you confirm whether you're asleep or not," Dudley replied. Chapter 34, Chapter 34, New Dada Professor. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 34, New Dada Professor. "What did you do to Creaker?" asked Sirius in disbelief. "Why does he obey and even respect you?" "Ha ha ha, Sirius, you just need to treat your house elf well," advised Dudley with a smirk. "No, this elf is a menace," said Sirius. "No wonder he treats me well and treats you like trash," replied Dudley. "Creaker," called Sirius Black. "Yes, Bastard Master?" "What does Bastard Master want?" asked Creaker. "Why do you respect Dudley?" Sirius asked. "Master Dudley is a wizard who deserves respect from others, unlike Bastard Master," replied Creaker, puffing out his chest. "Damn, I didn't think that simply offering Creaker a job to destroy a Horcrux would make him turn 180 degrees and even call me master with such respect," Dudley thought, astonished by Creaker's change. Knock knock. Someone was at the door. "Come in," said Sirius Black. Susan, Harry, and the Dursleys entered the room to check on Dudley. Somehow, Susan had managed to knock Dudley out, showing how dangerous she could be. Seeing Susan, Dudley suddenly remembered how terrifying she could become. Mentally, he promised not to provoke her again. "Hi," Dudley greeted awkwardly. "Diddy, oh my dear darling." Petunia hugged her son tightly, reminding Harry of how Molly Weasley would act when her children encountered danger. "Are you okay, son?" asked Vernon. "I'm okay, look at my fat," Dudley said, trying to pose humorously with his belly. The gloomy atmosphere lightened, and everyone started feeling happier. "Dudley, I'm sorry," Susan apologized. She had never lost control in the 4 years she had been friends with Dudley, but today, somehow, this new Dudley had triggered her anger. "It's okay, Susan. It was my fault," Dudley said, deciding not to tease her anymore. Mentally, he added, "Beauty is one thing, but physical prowess is another. It's better to marry Luna Lovegood than Susan." Hearing this, Susan felt happy after her victory over Dudley. However, she noticed that Petunia seemed uncomfortable around her, not scolding her, but becoming more distant. Somehow, she felt uneasy and uncertain. Looking at Dudley, this fat boy had somehow managed to slip into her heart without her even realizing it. "Give him to me." "Dudley, how did you manage to tame Creaker? He's so obedient to you now," asked Harry. "Not just obedient, Harry. He's somehow become respectful towards Dudley," added Susan. "You guys want to know the secret?" asked Dudley. Of course, they both nodded. "Okay, it's a trade secret. But since you guys are my close friends, the price for this trade secret is 10,000 galleons. But for today only, I'll offer a discount, just 2,000 galleons, Dudley offered with a grin. Susan felt her hand itch with the urge to punch someone, while Harry looked dumbfounded. "Not willing to pay? Then no answer for you," Dudley teased, noticing Susan's fists tightening. Sensing danger, he quickly changed the subject. "Oh, but where's Hermione?" "She and her family went home," replied Harry, and Dudley noticed Susan had relaxed her fists. "Phew," Dudley sighed silently in relief. Just then, Sirius entered the kitchen with Vernon and Petunia, talking about the magical community. "Sirius, where are you headed this time?" asked Dudley. "I mean, what are you planning to do?" I want to move out," replied Sirius, clearly frustrated with living at 12 Grimmauld Place. "Good, so where will you go?" Dudley asked. "He'll stay with us," Vernon interrupted. "What? He's staying with us?" exclaimed Dudley. "Yeah," Vernon confirmed. A few minutes earlier, Sirius had offered Vernon some gold galleons. Even though the money couldn't be used in the Muggle world, the gold itself was valuable, and Vernon had a soft spot for money. So, Vernon accepted Sirius' plea to stay with them. Besides, it would be much safer being surrounded by wizards. "What about Creaker?" asked Dudley, turning his head toward the elf. "He'll stay here," answered Sirius. "How about giving him to me?" suggested Dudley, recalling his last conversation with Creaker. "Creaker, how about you stay with me?" offered Dudley. "It'll be much easier to hunt Horcruxes together." I want to, but I'm a House of Black house elf. "I cannot betray this house," replied Creaker, clearly torn between his desire to follow Dudley and his loyalty to the House of Black. "How about I ask Sirius to lend you to me? That way, we'll be bonded for a while, but you'll still be a House of Black house elf. You can honor your Master Regulus' last wish and still die as a Black family elf," Dudley suggested. Hearing this, Creaker's eyes widened, and then he grinned. "Okay, Master. We'll do as you suggest," Creaker agreed. Now, back to the present moment, Dudley suggested to Sirius that he temporarily transfer Creaker's ownership by lending him for a while. "I can, but this house elf won't stay with Muggles," Sirius said seriously. "If it's Master Dudley, I will do it," Creaker suddenly chimed in. "See, he agrees," Dudley said with a smile, looking at Sirius. Sirius, unsure of what to do, decided to go along with it. He raised his wand and placed the tip on his other hand. "I, as the last descendant of the House of Black, give permission to Dudley Dursley as the temporary master of Creaker." "So mote it be," Sirius said, transferring Creaker's temporary ownership. "Dudley, try it." "I want to know if it worked," urged Sirius. "Creaker, dance," Dudley commanded. Suddenly, Creaker, who had been standing still, began to dance as though someone was controlling him. It worked. "Creaker, stop," Dudley ordered again. Hogwarts. This summer vacation had drained most of Dumbledore's energy. After solving one problem, another would quickly arise. Recently, he received a letter from the Ministry stating that Dolores Umbridge would become the defense against the dark arts professor. However, due to her scandal and subsequent arrest, Dumbledore needed to find a new professor for the 5th year. He planned to appoint Sirius Black as the Dada professor, given his experience and his role as a member of the Order of the Phoenix. Today, another letter arrived from the Ministry. Dear Mr. Dumbledore, due to the recent capture of Dolores Umbridge, we have decided to appoint Lucius Malfoy as the defense against the Dark Arts professor. Sincerely, Cornelius Fudge, Minister for Magic. Lucius Malfoy, unlike Umbridge, was a 100% Death Eater. It pained Dumbledore that, even in his old age, he still had to figure out how to protect his students from the threat of a dark wizard working at Hogwarts. Chapter 35, Diagon Alley. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 35, Diagon Alley. Sirius and Creaker were finally living with the Dursleys. Dudley didn't know how much Sirius had paid his father, but this cheap father were grinning all the time. He only did this if his project is a success or he received bonus, so this time the money that being paid must be a lot. But that not his concern at the moment. Apparently they wanted to see his phoenix. When I open this briefcase it will be a whole new world there, said Dudley to his parents. So are you ready? We are ready, replied Vernon and Petunia. I also ready, added Sirius Black. Good. Dudley opened the briefcase and there are some sort of stair inside it. So we just need to enter this briefcase. Whoa, it was first time Vernon and Petunia see the expansion magic. They took a moment to look at it before Vernon noticing something. Son, the opening is too small, Vernon questioning his son. Apparently Petunia also had noticed, but as a wife she knows how to protect the dignity of Vernon. Don't worry, my size are bigger than the opening too. Dudley then entered the briefcase. Like magic the briefcase had expanded following his body size. When Dudley are already at the bottom, Father, don't worry, it would automatically expand following the visitor body size. Looking at his son who are at the bottom, he then decided to follow him. Following her husband Petunia also went inside, and lastly is Harry Potter. Wow, son, exclaimed Vernon. Inside the briefcase are not actually small lab but feel like a whole new world. Some part are covered in snow, desert, autumn. There are also a big lake with an aquatic plant and fish. There are a big manor, small farm, and many more that could fit the animal inside. Most importantly, there are artificial sun that neither too cold or too hot. Harry and Susan had went inside this place for many times, but they are still impressive on how massive and beautiful this secret place really is. But compared to first-timer like Vernon and Petunia, they thought they are in heaven. Darling, am I in heaven? Asked Petunia. Nope, honey. We are not dead yet, replied Vernon, trying to snap his wife from her daydreaming. Sonic, called Dudley. The big red bird suddenly flew towards Dudley's arm. This is the phoenix, father. The phoenix is really beautiful and most rarest bird in the Harry Potter universe. If not because of Dumbledore, someone might not even see it. Sonic has been tamed and become obedient pet, so the bird shows her majestic appearance by flapping her wings. It is a beautiful bird, said Sirius. So this is a legendary phoenix, added Vernon. Petunia just looking at the phoenix. There are many memories she purposely trying to delete because of her sister. She actually wanted to become a witch, but she knew she was just a normal human. So this time, instead of blocking the memory, she accepted it. Eventually she got to use many wizards' item. For example, her fridge no longer need gas or coal, Mipsy heating it up by using heat magic. She was also introduced with two-way mirror by Sirius Black. With this item she can connect with her son every day. She wondered why wizards are not popularize this item, instead are using owl to send a letter. Dudley, I can say one thing, said Sirius Black. You are clearly the most genius person I have seen in this world. I know, I'm genius. Dudley try humble bragging technique. Just say you like it, Dudley, added Susan. Ha 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 ha, you caught me, replied Dudley. You are very good, son, said Vernon. Absolutely the best son I could ask for, added Petunia. Diagon Alley. So will your aunt come here to go buy our Hogwarts equipment? Asked Dudley to Susan. Every year she will spend her time to go Diagon Alley with me, replied Susan. Oh okay, let's wait her. I think 10 a.m. is a good time to go shopping, suggested Dudley. Even though Dudley had been to Diagon Alley in the past, but that is all the memories and not himself going there. There are many places he wanted to go and also picked Firebolt broom, his broom that he got from Hogwarts Legacy are outdated version. 100 years improvement, the speed would become very fast, if not speed the handling might be better. As someone who studied physics, he knows if a wizard could move at the speed of sound they might experience G-force and potential collapse during flying. Before this the AI just bought the necessary items such as clothes, wand, potion item, books, and so on. He never bought something like broom. Luckily he had a lot of money from Hogwarts Legacy and this is all real gold tempered by the goblin. Dudley had tried the comparison between his galleon from Hogwarts Legacy and this universe galleon, and the shape and size are the same. If not the same, he might ask Goblin to convert the currency from Hogwarts Legacy to this world galleon. Will there be an attack? Asked Harry suddenly. I don't think there will be an attack, but for safety reason let's get ready for anything. It is better to be safe than sorry, commented Dudley. Yeah, let's bring our wand, added Susan. This time Petunia and Vernon didn't follow them like usual, because it was too unsafe. They also didn't linger there for too long, instead they bought everything necessary, but this time Dudley buy a lot of books such as mind arts because he wanted to learn Occlumency and Legilimency. He also bought advanced book about runes and spell making, not just that, he also ordered the expensive robes that Malfoy goons always wore. It is made by a Chromantula silk, something like that. They didn't meet Weasley but they do meet Grangers, so of course the duo between Hermione and Dudley resulted with them buy a lot of book. People will think you wanted to open your own bookstore, commented Dr. Granger upon seeing his daughter bought a lot of book. Hermione grinned then commented, this is not just my book, 4/5 of this book are bought by Dudley. Chapter 36, Chapter 36, Training. Disclaimer, Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 36, Training. Dudley, why do you need so many books? Asked Harry, noticing Dudley had bought more than what he seemed to need. Harry, do you want to know why? Dudley replied. When a soldier trains diligently, more people can be saved on the battlefield. Like a spark, Harry finally understood why his cousin bought so many books. It was preparation to face Voldemort. Harry scolded himself inwardly. Even though he knew that Voldemort would hunt him, he was still preoccupied with other things. Even in the original story, this young boy was too busy playing Quidditch, sulking with professors, and more. But Harry was just a normal teenager being led by Dumbledore and Hermione. Some fans even jokingly called the series Hermione and Two Idiots because everything that happened from Book 1 to Book 7 was led by Hermione, with Harry always doing the final finishing or final duel. Dudley then went to Dr. Granger. Don't worry, Dr. Granger, 80% of these books were bought with my own money. Wow, I thought my daughter was the one who loved books. Didn't know she had someone who loves them more, joked Dr. Granger. Daddy, huffed Hermione. Just joking, Hermione, Dr. Granger said, then turned his focus back to Dudley. I'm glad you're one of my daughter's friends. It was true. Based on what he knew about Dudley, this young man was excellent in his studies and had a good sense of humor. Respectful and gentle, Dudley had the qualities of a good husband. But even though Dr. Granger liked him, he knew Hermione should choose her own partner. After all, he and his wife married for love. I'm also glad Hermione is my friend. She's been my eternal rival in school, Dudley revealed. Hearing the words eternal rival made Hermione stare at him sharply, her face resembling a canony. Luckily, Madame Pomfrey had shrunk her front teeth last year, so her face no longer resembled a rabbit. It was true that Dudley always got first place, with Hermione landing in second. Because of this, they had eventually earned the nickname Eternal Rivals. One thing Dudley didn't do was raise his hand when a professor asked a question. Otherwise, he wasn't sure what would happen to Hermione. Either she'd get frustrated, or maybe she'd even fall in love with him, since she had never beaten him academically. Everything can happen to the book, so it is one of the possibility. A lot of gun. There are only a few days left before he will go to school. A few things happen, such as he had bought the gun using Sirius Service. Basically, Sirius Black went to the USA and bought a series of guns. 5 sets of Glock 19, a bunch of bullets. AR-15 because M4 or M15 are hard to get, only military could own it, and also somehow Sirius managed to secure bazooka and hand grenade. Sirius, who bought the gun, also bought for himself as a souvenir. He is one of the people who didn't know what a gun really is and became dumbfounded upon training inside the briefcase. Bang! A small explosion echoed, and the wooden target shattered from the gun's power. What? How could this small object destroy that? Sirius asked in disbelief. Susan, who had never seen or heard of guns, had a similar shocked expression. If you want to know, this thing has killed dozens of wizards because they don't understand muggles. They think muggles still fight with swords and shields like in the Middle Ages. Many wizards died during WWI and World War II, Dudley explained. Is that true, son? Vernon asked. Yeah, it's true, but we never considered shooting Death Eaters the moment they began their rampage, said Dudley. But a lot of muggles died in the last war, Sirius noted. That's because we didn't know about wizards. We thought they weren't carrying weapons, but... Dudley trailed off. Now, let me show you this little thing, Dudley said, picking up a grenade from the box. This is about the same as a bombarda spell. Is it an explosive? Susan asked. Yeah, it's an explosive device. You just pull this pin, and it explodes, Dudley grinned. You want to know the best thing about Muggle weapons? What? Asked Susan, and even Sirius seemed curious. Protego can't stop bullets. That means we can catch them off guard. They think we'll use wands and try to block the attack, but when they see the orange flash, they won't think it's an unforgivable curse, Dudley explained. Author's note: someone left a comment claiming that people in the UK cannot own guns. That law came into effect after 1996, and since Dudley is still in 1995, it means he can legally own a gun. Unfortunately, I had written that the ban thing happened in this 1995s, so you can consider the ban of gun are during 1990s. Weight loss. Dudley had been training with his house elf, Creaker, to get into better shape, and he also invited Mipsy to join the sessions. Inevitably, Harry, Susan, and Sirius ended up joining their training as well. Because of this, they didn't notice how quickly Dudley's weight had dropped. This happened because Dudley had been using the edit character function in a gamer mode. Every day, he would lose about 2 kilograms while shaping himself to look as good as Harry Styles, but not exactly like him, as he still needed to resemble Vernon and Petunia. By the time school was about to begin, he had managed to lose around 20 kilograms. His weight had dropped from 130 kilograms to 110 kilograms when he was in Sirius' house, and now it was down to 80 kilograms after he trained every day. His height had increased from 178 centimeters to 185 centimeters, and he planned to eventually reach 192 centimeters, but he was taking it slowly. Creaker, who had always been gloomy, also became more active, and he and Mipsy became brothers in arms. Dudley introduced modern training methods like running, jumping, eating nutritious food, dodging objects, and more. They all became more skilled and faster than before. Creaker's eyes were no longer lifeless. He now had a goal: to destroy Lord Voldemort and all his Horcruxes. Chapter 37, Chapter 37, Train Ride. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 37, Train Ride. Finally, the day Dudley had been eagerly waiting for arrived. It was September 1st, time to go to Hogwarts. This time, he went to the train station with Susan and his Aunt Amelia. Beside him were also Harry Potter, his only cousin, and the newly released Sirius Black. They had been living together all summer, and their relationships had grown much closer. Amelia had noticed Dudley using magic several times. At first, she was furious and scolded him, but Dudley quickly tried to reason with her. "Madam Bones, do you know why I've been using magic outside of school?" Dudley asked. "Why?" Amelia, clearly frustrated, replied. "It's to fight against you-know-who. The more I practice magic, the easier it'll be for me to use it in a duel," Dudley explained. "And besides, I'm a Muggle-born and Harry Potter's cousin, which makes me one of their primary targets." Hearing this, the stern lady finally gave in, turning a blind eye and allowing Dudley to use magic outside of school. She also knew that other pure-blood families let their children practice magic outside of school, giving them an advantage over Muggleborns. Now, back to the present day, the day to leave for Hogwarts. "Are you ready to go to Hogwarts?" Dudley asked Harry and Susan. His question lingered in the air, unanswered, as Harry and Susan were both lost in thought, thinking about the dangers of Voldemort and the tragic events of last year, when Cedric had died. "Who do you think will be our new professor this year?" Dudley asked. That question managed to spark their interest. "I don't know, but I hope it's not a Death Eater," answered Harry, and Susan nodded in agreement. "I just hope they're as competent as Professor Lupin," Susan added. "Yeah, Professor Lupin was the best teacher we ever had," Harry smiled. Talking about Lupin, Dudley suddenly remembered something. "Do you think it's too late to change the professor for this year?" Dudley asked. "Why? Do you have someone in mind?" Susan inquired. "Of course. Sirius Black. He's got tons of experience dealing with Death Eaters," Dudley replied. "And he faced Dementors for 12 years. "Yeah, Sirius would be a great candidate," Harry agreed, smiling. "He might teach us the Patronus charm," Dudley grinned. "But wouldn't it be dangerous for Death Eaters to learn how to cast a Patronus?" Harry asked. "You mean the ones in Slytherin?" Dudley replied. "Don't worry. The Patronus charm is really difficult. Even the Dark Lord couldn't master it, and he's known as the strongest dark wizard ever." "Why couldn't he master it?" Harry asked again. "Because those who use too much dark magic can't cast a Patronus," Dudley explained. "If they try, the spell would backfire on them. Besides, if Death Eaters could send messages with a Patronus, the war would be a lot harder for us." Train station. Upon arriving at the train station, they met the Granger family. "Hi, Dr. Granger, great to see you again," greeted Dudley. "Wow, are you Dudley?" Dr. Granger asked, surprised. Everyone who had known Dudley was shocked by how different he looked this year compared to last year. Dudley's height had increased to 190 centimeters, and his weight was down to 90 kilograms. "Dudley, is that really you?" Hermione cut in, noticing how much he'd changed. In just a few days, he had grown 3 centimeters taller, become much slimmer, and looked far more handsome. "Yeah, it's me," replied Dudley, while Harry and Susan exchanged puzzled glances. Since they saw him every day, they hadn't noticed the drastic difference, except that he looked healthier. "You look so different," commented Hermione. "Oh, thank you," Dudley smiled. "You do look different, not just in terms of weight and height, but even your face," added Dr. Granger. "Thank you so much. It's because of all the training, I lost a lot of weight," Dudley explained. "It's good to stay healthy," Monica Granger commented. Suddenly, the Vernon and Petunia entered the station after paying for the parking ticket. "Dr. Granger, you're here," greeted Vernon, who had become acquainted with Dr. Granger since their children were both wizards. "I'm good, Mr. Vernon, how is the project in Buckingham going?" asked Dr. Granger. "I suppose it's a success." "Of course, thank you for your advice," smiled Vernon. Meanwhile, on the other side, the mothers were chatting with each other. "Petunia, your recipe is absolutely delicious," complimented Monica Granger. "Do you happen to have another one?" Petunia and Monica had exchanged recipes, and Monica was clearly impressed with how good the food turned out with Petunia's recipe. Petunia, in turn, was very respectful toward Monica and held no prejudice against career women, especially dentists like Monica. Monica was a dentist, and Petunia knew it wasn't easy to become one, which is why she was keen to befriend her. For about half an hour, they discussed various topics until it was almost time for the train to leave for Hogwarts. "I'm sorry to interrupt," said Amelia Bones, who suddenly arrived with Sirius Black, "but it's time for the kids to get on the train." Dudley looked at his watch and realized they had 10 more minutes to find a cabin before the train departed. He looked around but didn't see the Weasley family. "It looks like they might be late this time," thought Dudley. In train. This year, Dudley decided to sit with his cousin, so Dudley, Susan, Harry, and Hermione sat together in one cabin. When Ron entered the cabin, he saw that Hermione and Harry had already chosen their seats, but he also noticed 2 unexpected faces, Dudley and Susan Bones. "Ron, my cousin's best friend," Dudley said, trying to break the ice. "Yeah. Harry Potter's friend," replied Ron Weasley. He felt a bit awkward talking to Dudley, as they had never spoken before. This was the first time they were talking face to face. Usually, only Hermione had chatted with Dudley because they were both bookworms who frequented the library. But suddenly, their peace was interrupted by an unwelcome guest. It is none other than Draco Malfoy. Chapter 38, You will regret this. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 38, You will regret this. Draco Malfoy POV. "Draco, I will be going to Hogwarts to become a professor," said Lucius Malfoy. "Really, father?" Draco smiled, clearly thrilled by the news. "Yes, I will be the defense against the dark arts professor," Lucius confirmed. That was the last conversation Draco had with his father before Draco departed for Hogwarts. "Let's find Harry Potter," said Draco to his goons Crabbe and Goyle. It had become an annual tradition for a Malfoy to seek out and annoy Harry, and Draco wasn't entirely sure why, but he felt an obsession with proving that Harry Potter wasn't as great as everyone thought. "Here you are," Draco said smugly as he opened the cabin door. His haughty gaze scanned Harry like a predator eyeing its prey until his eyes landed on someone unexpected. Sitting beside Harry was someone who had never traveled with him before, Dudley Dursley. The sight of Dudley brought back unpleasant memories for Draco. He still remembered the humiliation he suffered at Dudley's hands the previous year. Since then, Draco had never dared to confront him directly. Even though this Dudley looked significantly different, slimmer, taller, and more confident, Draco still felt the sting of his previous encounter. "You!" Draco pointed at Dudley, his voice shaky. But before he could say more, Ron interrupted. "Looks like Draco Malfoy's scared of Dudley," Ron said with a smirk. "Who said I'm scared of him?" Malfoy huffed angrily, trying to hide his fear. Even though he was terrified of Dudley, he couldn't show any weakness in front of Ron. "So, why are you here this time?" Harry asked, amused at Draco's obvious discomfort. "I warned you before, Harry Potter, to choose the right side, but you've chosen wrong," Draco replied vaguely, avoiding specifics since Susan Bones was present, and her aunt was the head of magical law enforcement. Draco couldn't risk exposing his father's involvement with the Death Eaters in front of her. "You seem very confident," Dudley said suddenly, speaking for the first time. Malfoy's bravado faltered slightly at Dudley's words, but he quickly retorted, "Don't you dare, Dursley. My father's going to be a professor at Hogwarts this year." The train cabin fell silent as everyone processed Draco's words. Then, realization struck. What? Ha ha ha, my father will make sure you regret ever coming to this school, Malfoy sneered. What professor will he be, Malfoy? Dudley asked, his curiosity piqued. He's going to be the new defense against the dark arts professor, Draco declared with a grin. Ha 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 ha, Dudley laughed, didn't you know that position is cursed by the Dark Lord? He put a spell on it ages ago, and that's why something terrible happens every year. Aren't you worried your father might lose his mind, get killed by a giant spider, or worse end up in Azkaban? Draco's smug grin faltered, and he turned pale. He recalled hearing rumors from older students about the curse on the defense against the dark arts position. Many previous professors had suffered strange accidents. Now, the thought of his father facing the same fate filled him with dread. You'll regret this. Draco spat before storming off with Crabbe and Goyle close behind. Dudley calmly shut the door, then turned back to the others. Ha ha ha, I hope something happens to them, Ron joked, clearly enjoying Malfoy's discomfort. Don't wish ill on others, Ron, Dudley said, but before you get too excited, remember Lucius Malfoy is a Death Eater. Would the Dark Lord still curse the position if his own follower held it? Ron's laughter died down, replaced by a frown of dissatisfaction. What kind of spell curses the position? Susan asked. I don't know exactly, Dudley replied. But the curse makes every professor lose something important. I've heard there was one professor who seemed to avoid anything bad, but on the last day of the school year, he got lost inside Hogwarts and wasn't found for a week. By the time they found him, he had died of hunger. What? Seriously? Gasped Harry. Yet. The curse targets the professor, and if they're clean, it attacks them directly. Remember what happened to Professor Lupin? On the last day, his secret came out. He was exposed as a werewolf, Dudley added. The others fell into uneasy silence, pondering Dudley's words. Dudley had watched the movie and read the novel about Draco Malfoy's eventual reversal from darkness to helping Harry Potter. For someone unfamiliar with fanfiction, it might seem natural to make Malfoy a part of Dumbledore's army. However, Dudley had also read a version where Malfoy was highly favored by the Dark Lord. In that story, Malfoy became truly arrogant, and the Malfoy family grew even more cruel toward Muggle-borns, torturing and even killing them. In this particular version, Malfoy only turned good because his family was looked down upon by many Death Eaters. But as for Book 5, Dudley knew this was the year Malfoy's arrogance would reach new heights, with the Dark Lord back on his side. Only later would Draco's arrogance be toned down, as Lucius Malfoy would eventually be sent to prison. Lucius Malfoy POV. It was true, just as Dudley had said, the position of defense against the dark arts professor was cursed. Knowing he had been chosen for the role, Lucius Malfoy gathered the courage to ask the Dark Lord something important. My lord, I will gladly take the position, but I have heard that no wizard has been able to hold that post for more than a year because of the curse you placed on it, Malfoy began cautiously. Even Dumbledore couldn't dispel it. Are you suggesting this is some kind of punishment? Voldemort's voice turned cold, his anger clearly directed at Lucius. That I deliberately sent you there to die. No, my lord, I did not mean that, Lucius hurried to clarify. I simply beg you to lift the curse while I serve in the position. Very well, Voldemort replied after a pause. But he had no intention of fully lifting the curse. He wanted Lucius to taste despair, even if just a little. The curse would remain, though its effects would be lessened. I cannot fully lift it, only weaken it, Voldemort added. But rest assured, the curse will not claim your family. End of Volume 1. Chapter 39, Chapter 39, Hogwarts. Starting of Volume 2. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 39, Hogwarts. Even though Dudley had seen in his memories and experienced an extra 15 years' worth of them, seeing the grand, ancient castle of Hogwarts over 1,000 years old in person was something else entirely. It left Dudley standing in awe. After all, he wasn't American, just an Asian guy stuck in a British man body. But there was an upside. He had grown to 192 centimeters, much taller than his original height of 164 centimeters. So, of course, he didn't have any complaints about the system. It'd be foolish to curse someone for giving you wealth, right? Wow, Dudley breathed, completely taken in by the sight of Hogwarts Castle. It was old, yes, but its majesty still lingered, like a place meant for kings. However, realizing he was in public, he quickly composed himself. He couldn't afford to show any suspicious behavior, especially in front of his friends. Game mode, activate, Dudley commanded internally. His excited expression quickly faded, replaced by a stoic, emotionless look. This was one of the perks of game mode, the ability to control his emotions and mask his reactions, making him look braver or more composed than he really was. It even served as a defense against legilimency. There were other features of game mode, but those were yet to be discovered. His stare finally landed to Susan and he decided to turn off the gamer mode. "Susan, don't you feel different?" Dudley asked. "Different? How so?" Susan replied. "I mean, after living with Muggles and seeing so much of their technology and infrastructure, don't you feel anything different now?" Dudley explained. During Susan's stay with the Dursleys, they had visited many places in the Muggle world, with some magical spells to disguise their identities so Death Eaters wouldn't spot Harry. She had experienced cinemas, tall buildings, trains, old telephones, TV, game consoles, and much more. Dudley had seen the excitement on Susan's face during those outings, like a child discovering new toys. So, of course, he was curious about her perspective. "The magical world feels a bit old," Susan answered honestly. She had read books and studied history while at the Dursleys, comparing the lifestyles of both worlds. Truthfully, she found Muggles more appealing, maybe because everything was newer and cleaner to her eyes. "I feel the same," Dudley agreed. "But magic offers something Muggles can't. If I had to choose, I'd still pick the magical side." Death Eater Professor. "It's true that Lucius Malfoy has become the new professor," Dudley whispered to Susan. Susan knew about Lucius Malfoy being a Death Eater. She had seen Harry Potter's memories in the Pensieve, so she was fully aware that Lucius was part of Voldemort's inner circle. "Isn't it dangerous for him to be here?" Susan asked quietly, her brow furrowed. "I can't believe Dumbledore let him become a professor." Dudley nodded. "I think Dumbledore didn't have much of a choice. After losing his positions as Chief Warlock and Supreme Mugwump, it's not surprising the Ministry could push someone like Lucius into Hogwarts." To be honest, Dudley was relieved that Dolores Umbridge wasn't one of the professors this year. He had read about how awful she was to Muggleborns, and he might have been her prime target after Harry Potter. With Lucius Malfoy, a known Death Eater, now at Hogwarts, they'd have to be cautious. But Dudley believed that, much like Snape, Lucius wouldn't dare do anything too extreme, especially since Harry had already seen him as a Death Eater. What Dudley couldn't understand was why Lucius, a Death Eater, would choose to become a professor. Wasn't having Snape already enough? The ripple effect was bigger than he thought. Those better suited for the Ministry were being forced into positions like this, he mean as a professor. From across the table, Dudley could see Draco Malfoy's smug look. Of course, my father will hear about this. Would be happy seeing his father in Hogwarts teaching those students. Besides Malfoy, Professor McGonagall clearly despised Lucius being here, though she did her best to hide it. The sorting ceremony continued as students were placed into their houses one by one. "Zainzinka," called Professor McGonagall. The last student was called. "Hufflepuff," shouted the Sorting Hat. "I think he's a Muggle-born," Dudley whispered to Susan. Maybe he's a half-blood, replied Susan. Look at his eyes, Dudley remarked. That's the kind of excitement only Muggle-borns have. So, he's your junior, teased Susan. Yeah, definitely my junior, Dudley grinned. As a Muggle-born, Dudley knew that in the original timeline, students like Zane would only have 2 years at Hogwarts before being captured and imprisoned by Dolores Umbridge. Luckily, Umbridge was now locked away. Even if she survived, her status as a half-blood wouldn't save her or being put into high position. A small chuckle escaped his lips. Susan looked at him. Why are you laughing? I was just thinking this year might be interesting, Dudley replied with a smile, thoughts of ministry battles and more in his mind. Just wait, everyone. I'll show you the veteran of Hogwarts Legacy. Hufflepuff dorm. One of the most curious things about Harry Potter is the number of students per year. In Hufflepuff, there are around 8 students, 3 boys and 5 girls. The total number of students in Harry's 5th year is 40, with Hufflepuff having the fewest. It's not surprising, considering Europe only has about 10,000 wizards, and 3,000 of them are from Britain. The reason Britain has so many wizards is largely thanks to Dumbledore. During Gellert Grindelwald's rampage, he killed many wizards across Europe, but those in Britain were saved because of Dumbledore. This man single-handedly defeated the Dark Lord, preserving the wizarding population in Britain. If it weren't for Grindelwald, the population could have easily grown to 20,000 or even 30,000. Pure-blood families, however, are often hesitant to have many children out of fear of producing a squib. As for Hogwarts students, Dudley is actually a popular figure in Hufflepuff, but because of his cold personality, most don't dare get too close. Even his roommates, like Ernie Macmillan and Justin Finch-Fletchley, aren't very close with him. The only person who seems to get along well with Dudley is Susan Bones, who is attracted to his cold demeanor. As a result, he also become friends with Susan and her close friend, Hannah Abbott. Chapter 40, Showing Memory. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 40, Showing Memory. Hi, Dudley, greeted Justin upon seeing him. Hello, Justin, Dudley replied with a smile. Justin blinked in disbelief. Normally, when he greeted Dudley, the boy would just nod in acknowledgement. This time, Dudley not only replied but also smiled at him. How was your holiday, Dudley? Asked Justin, trying to continue the conversation. Good. We went to the cinema and visited lots of places, Dudley replied casually. Oh, good to know, Justin said, smiling. We went to the Tower of London. I know that place. My father took me there when I was 10, Dudley said with a hint of nostalgia. Suddenly, Ernie Macmillan entered the dormitory. Did I interrupt something? Ernie asked, noticing the 2 boys in conversation. Nope, we just started, Justin replied. Yeah, we just started, Dudley echoed with a smile. Ernie froze for a moment, stunned by the change in Dudley's demeanor. Usually stoic and distant, Dudley now seemed approachable. Gathering his courage, Ernie decided to join the conversation. Dudley, how was your holiday? Asked Ernie. It was good. We visited a lot of places and even had a birthday party, Dudley replied. Birthday party? You only mentioned visiting places earlier, Justin said, feigning a hurt expression. Sorry. When people ask you the same question twice, you start preparing more answers, Dudley said, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. Both Justin and Ernie exchanged amused glances. This new, friendlier version of Dudley was unexpected but welcome. Compared to the old Dudley, who was all yes, no, or I don't know, this version was far more likable. The 3 continued chatting about various topics until Ernie suddenly brought up a controversial question. Is it true that you know who is back? Ernie asked hesitantly. Though Ernie didn't believe Harry Potter's claims, mostly due to his parents' influence. He was careful to respect the boundaries and privacy of those within Hufflepuff. That was one of the unique traits of the Hufflepuff house. They stood united, fiercely protecting their own people from outsiders. Even if they disliked someone within their house, they rarely showed it. Harry Potter's case was different. Some people might say that in Harry's 4th years he was being harassed. He was ostracized by Hufflepuff because he is a Gryffindor and because Cedric Diggory was the official Triwizard Tournament champion. Many Hufflepuffs harbored resentment toward Harry. Meanwhile, for adults, rejecting Dumbledore's claim that Voldemort had returned was a way of avoiding living in fear, which also affected the student like Ernie. His parents repeatedly insisted Voldemort's return was a false, and hearing it so often made the lie feel like the truth. Justin knew very little about the wizarding world since his parents were Muggles. However, during his train ride to Hogwarts, he overheard conversations claiming that Dumbledore had gone senile and that Voldemort's return was nothing but a lie. This gave him some context as to why Ernie was questioning Dudley about it. Of course, it also made sense because Dudley Dursley was Harry Potter's cousin, even though Dudley rarely interacted with Harry at school. "If I said he has returned, would you believe me?" Dudley calmly reversed the question back to Ernie. Ernie frowned in response, while Justin tried to shrink into the background, not wanting to get involved. "I'm not saying I don't believe you," Ernie said defensively, "but if he's really returned, why hasn't anyone seen him?" Dudley sighed, exasperated. "Kids," he muttered under his breath. "All right, I'll show you part of the memory my cousin shared with me." "Memory? How?" Justin asked, curious but wary. Ernie, despite being a pure-blood, had never seen a Pensieve before and looked equally puzzled at how Dudley planned to show a memory. Dudley walked over to his bag, pretending to retrieve something, but in reality, he accessed his game inventory and pulled out a Pensieve. With a flick of his wand, he conjured a table and placed the Pensieve on top of it. "This," Dudley began, gesturing toward the bowl-like object, "is a Pensieve. It allows us to view memories. Have you ever heard of it before?" Dudley directed the question at Ernie, knowing it would be embarrassing for a pure-blood wizard not to recognize such a rare magical item. "I've heard of it, but I've never seen one in person," Ernie admitted, his surprise evident. "These are extremely rare. How on earth did you get one?" Ernie was baffled. As far as he knew, Pensieves were rare artifact, often owned by only the most accomplished wizards. When the owner passed away, the Pensieve was usually buried with them. Yet here was Dudley, a Muggle-born, with a brand new one. "It's not difficult for me to acquire," Dudley said with a mysterious smile. "Now, I'll show you what happened to Cedric." He raised his wand to his temple and carefully extracted a shimmering silver strand of memory. Placing it into the swirling contents of the Pensieve, he said, "This is a memory Harry shared with me. Now, dip your heads into the Pensieve to see for yourselves." Ernie and Justin hesitated for a moment, exchanging a glance, but curiosity got the better of them. They leaned forward and dipped their heads into the Pensieve. As they did, their bodies became translucent, and moments later, they were pulled into the memory. Dudley, too lazy to enter the Pensieve himself, decided to wait outside while Ernie and Justin explored the memory. When they finally emerged, their faces were pale with shock. Dudley smiled slightly, knowing the misunderstanding had finally been cleared up. "You? That? How?" Justin stammered, clearly overwhelmed. "Dudley, I believe you," Ernie said firmly, his expression serious. But Justin, instead of focusing on Voldemort's return, had something entirely different on his mind. "I mean, why is Susan always with you? She's one of the hottest girls in school," he blurted out, jealousy tinging his voice. Dudley's frown deepened. Here he was, showing them undeniable proof of Voldemort's return, and Justin was fixated on Susan Bones. "You?" Dudley sighed, trying to keep his temper in check. Her aunt is the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, so I called her that day to view the memory. Oh, I see, Justin replied sheepishly. But if Susan has seen the memory, why does the Daily Prophet still claim your cousin and Dumbledore are liars? Ernie asked, frowning in confusion. Because Cornelius Fudge denies Voldemort's return, Dudley explained. And most adult wizards are too afraid to face the truth. They deny it because they don't want to live in fear again. Live in fear? Justin echoed, his curiosity piqued. When Voldemort was in power decades ago, people were terrified to even step outside. And even inside their homes, they kept their wands by their sides while they slept. They were prepared to flee at a moment's notice. The fear was constant and they don't want to experience that again, Dudley elaborated. How do you know all this? Ernie asked, narrowing his eyes suspiciously. Well, I'm a huge fan of Harry Potter and read the books cover to cover, Dudley thought but didn't dare say aloud. Instead, he replied, because I'm one of his targets. I need to understand my enemy. Chapter 41, Kitchen. Disclaimer, Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 41, Kitchen. The chirping of birds outside woke Dudley from his sleep, his eyes snapping open as he looked around his surroundings. The decorations in Hufflepuff looked almost the same as what he had seen in Hogwarts Legacy. But there was one thing he needed to figure out, it is the location of the kitchen. Why did he want to go to the kitchen? Because there were two house elves he wanted to recruit, Dobby and Winky. As a reader of Harry Potter books he knows how loyal Dobby to Harry Potter and how Winky really wanted a wizard as her master. Harry Potter really was just a kid. Even after killing the basilisk, he had left the corpse to rot there. He hadn't even thought to go back and check for any books Salazar Slytherin might have left behind. If he is the one who's slain the basilisk, the first thing he will do is to sell the corpse and venom of the basilisk. But it didn't matter anymore. The basilisk had turned into a skeleton, and the only valuable thing left was the basilisk fang. Dudley needed that fang to destroy the Horcruxes. Another mistake Harry had made was not recruiting Dobby or Winky. Maybe it was because of Hermione's SPEW campaign they probably respected her enough not to take the loyal elves. Dudley got up and opened the window, but since the Hufflepuff dormitory was in the basement, there wasn't much to see except the greenery. Plants were growing inside the common room and outside the basement windows. Hufflepuff really was perfect for anyone who loved nature. It was a pity Neville wasn't in this house. Dudley headed to the common room and met Justin. Morning, Dudley greeted him. Hi, morning, Dudley, Justin smiled back. Dudley moved towards the door, clearly intending to head out. Where are you going? Justin asked. The kitchen, obviously, Dudley replied. The kitchen? Do you even know where it is? Justin asked, surprised. Not everyone knew the location of the kitchen, even among the Hufflepuffs. Those who did often kept it a secret because students were encouraged to eat in the Great Hall instead of sneaking into the kitchen. Come on, I'll show you, Dudley invited. Justin stood up, ready to follow, but before they could leave, Susan and Hannah came down the stairs. Up early, Justin? Susan said, surprised to see him awake. She hadn't noticed Dudley by the door yet. Yeah, I had a nightmare, so I woke up early for some fresh air, Justin replied. He had been traumatized by the revelation from Dudley the night before. Seeing Voldemort's true face in the Pensieve had shaken him deeply, and when he slept, he dreamt of his family being killed by the Dark Lord. Waking up in a cold sweat, he had come to the common room to collect his thoughts, haunted by the stories and books he had read about Voldemort's reign of terror. Susan, didn't know you were a morning person, Dudley teased as he approached. My internal clock's been reset to 6 a.m., thanks to some dude, Susan retorted with a smirk. During her time at Dudley's house, he had been obsessed with training and woke up early every day. She had gotten into the habit as well, training alongside Harry, Dudley, Winky, and sometimes even her Aunt Amelia. Haha! Do you two want to join me in the kitchen? Dudley asked with a grin. The kitchen? You know where it is? Hannah asked, intrigued. You can count on me, Dudley said, smiling confidently. The kitchen. Welcome to the kitchen, said Dudley as he opened the door. Wow, they all exclaimed. Hogwarts students. Let's greet them. Welcome, Master. My name is Stipsy. I am Snix. The house elves were eager to greet them. Though they saw students every day, they rarely had the chance to interact directly with them. Normally, they worked silently behind the scenes, unnoticed by the students. So, when someone actually visited the kitchen, especially new students, the house elves greeted them enthusiastically. Hi, what food are you making today? Dudley asked. We have pasta, sandwiches, and much more, answered one of the elves. Okay, I'll have some milk and 2 slices of buttered bread, Dudley said. What about you, Susan? Just give me the same as him, Susan replied. I'll have eggs with bread and some pumpkin juice, Justin ordered. I'll have the same as Susan, Hannah added. The 4 of them sat down, waiting as the house elves prepared their food. It only took a few minutes before everything was ready. Out of the corner of his eye, Dudley noticed the elf he had been looking for. Are you Dobby? Dudley asked. His question immediately caught the elf's attention. Yes, I'm Dobby, Dobby answered with a wide smile. And you? I remember. You're the cousin of the great master, Harry Potter. Yeah, that's me, Dudley smiled back. Dobby? Is this the elf that almost got you kicked out of school? Susan whispered to Dudley. Yep, he's the one, Dudley confirmed. So, Dobby, what are you doing here now? Dudley asked. Dobby is working here now. Professor Dumbledore hired Dobby, and I'm getting paid 1 galleon a week, Dobby said proudly. Hearing this, the other house elves shot Dobby contemptuous looks, disapproving of his choice to accept payment, which they felt undermined the honor of house elves. Oh, is it fun working here? Dudley asked with a curious smile. Yeah, it is. Professor Dumbledore is really kind, Dobby replied with a smile. Dobby, would you like to work for me? Harry and I are a bit short on house elves, so we need another one, Dudley offered casually. Susan shot Dudley a sharp glare, her eyes wide with disbelief, muttering something under her breath. Dudley pretended not to notice, while Justin looked surprised at the offer. It was the first time Hannah had ever heard of a house elf being paid. Suddenly, Dobby burst into tears. Master Dudley wants Dobby to work for him. Dobby asked, needing confirmation. That's right. I can offer you 1 galleon a week and 1 day off every month, Dudley said. Dobby wants to work for Master Dudley. Dobby exclaimed, raising his right hand into the air. Master Dudley is the cousin of the great Harry Potter. Chapter 42, Chapter 42, Peeves. Disclaimer, Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 42, Peeves. Please come again, Master, said the house elf as they left the kitchen. Dudley smiled and raised his hand. When I return, make sure to follow the recipe I gave you. We will, Master. You are an expert cook, replied the house elf. You've changed a lot, Dudley, Justin commented as they walked out. What do you mean? Dudley asked. I mean compared to last year. Your personality has completely changed, Justin clarified. I had to change, Justin. Last year, I didn't do anything when the whole school was boycotting my cousin, Dudley admitted. I'm sorry. I was part of that boycott too, Justin said, regretful. Don't apologize to me. If you really mean it, apologize to my cousin, Dudley replied firmly. I will. By the way, I like the new you, Justin complimented. I like your new personality too, Dudley, added Hannah Abbott with a smile. Only Susan remained silent, so Hannah couldn't resist teasing her. Hey, Susan, why are you so quiet? Don't tell me you spent the whole summer living at his house, she teased. A second passed, then 10 seconds. Wait, seriously? You actually stayed at his house? Justin and Hannah both stared wide-eyed. Susan blushed slightly. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I stayed with him and my aunt. Why? Hannah asked, still in shock, while Justin's mouth hung open. Because of you-know-who. My aunt wanted to hear the truth from Harry Potter himself, Susan explained. And do you believe him? Hannah asked. After hearing the real story from Harry, yes, I do, Susan replied, standing up for Harry. Well, if you believe him, then I believe Harry Potter too, Hannah declared. Oh, why is that? Dudley asked, curious. Because Susan never lies, and her aunt is the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Hannah answered confidently. Susan beamed, clearly happy to have someone who trusted her completely. While Hannah's reaction made sense, Dudley found it odd that Justin was acting surprised, considering he had seen the memory in the Pensieve and knew about Susan staying at Dudley's house. Wait a minute, we still need to go to the Great Hall. Professor Sprout will be giving out the timetables there, Susan reminded them. Oh yeah, we shouldn't have eaten in the kitchen, we could have had breakfast with the others, added Hannah. We can still go and just drink some milk while we wait for Professor Sprout, Dudley suggested. Sounds good. Let's go, they all agreed. Meeting Poltergeist. As they walked around Hogwarts, Dudley didn't manage to visit the Room of Requirement, located on the 7th floor. However, he did encounter the legendary poltergeist, Peeves. Congratulations! For meeting the rarest poltergeist. Reward, sense increase by 5. System, why did I get a reward for meeting a poltergeist but not a ghost? Dudley asked mentally. Poltergeists are very rare and difficult to encounter, whereas ghosts are common, the system replied, though only Dudley could hear it. His friends continued walking, oblivious to the conversation in his head. What's the difference between a poltergeist and a ghost? Dudley asked internally. A poltergeist is a creature that is still alive, whereas the ghosts you've seen are dead wizards. They are merely magical imprints, not actual souls. Wait, no souls? I thought ghosts are souls, Dudley questioned mentally. No, host. When someone dies, they cannot come back to life, not even as a ghost. But why do they behave like normal humans? Dudley asked, confused. That's a misconception, host. Even after 1,000 years, a ghost retains the same personality they had in life. That's why ghosts, like your history professor, can repeat the same tasks every day. Okay, you win, Dudley muttered under his breath. Who won, Dudley? Justin asked, raising an eyebrow. Ha ha ha, did I say that out loud? Dudley laughed awkwardly. Yeah, you did, confirmed Hannah with a chuckle. Chapter 43, Chapter 43, Potion Class. Disclaimer, Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 43, Potion Class. Arg, it is so stressful, why is potions so early in the morning, and it's a double period too, grumbled Justin. Relax, man, it's just 2 hours, and Professor Snape is actually a professional poti-winner, Dudley said, trying to calm him down. Why are you so calm, man? Did last year's incident make you like him or something? Questioned Justin. Hey? What incident? Asked Dudley. The duel with Professor Snape, when you almost made him lose, answered Justin. Oh, that incident, Dudley replied. Nat, I just respect him for his knowledge. It was true, this version of Dudley had grown to respect Snape in terms of his expertise. Even though Snape was still a jerk, his potion-making skills were top-notch. The memories of brewing potions under Snape's guidance had shown Dudley that Snape taught his students to brew more potent potions than what the textbook described. During lessons, Snape often instructed with sharp phrases like, "Look at me. Open your books and turn to page. You should be paying attention. I expect you to follow my instructions precisely." One of Snape's stern classroom catchphrases is, "Follow the instructions on the board." He uses this especially during potions lessons to ensure students follow his directions exactly. Those instructions are often very different from what's in the book, which is why, in Hermione's 6th year, things became more difficult when Slughorn started teaching. But when Snape taught her, she would simply say, "Just look at the instructions, the answer is there." "Only you would say something like that, Mr. Number 1, Justin replied. Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw also experienced discrimination from Snape, but compared to Gryffindor, it wasn't as bad. This was because Snape really hated Gryffindor. There were additional factors too, such as Slytherin being paired with Gryffindor in class and of course Harry being there. That's why Gryffindor's points often dropped after Harry's class with Snape. But ever since Dudley's duel with Professor Snape, Dudley had also become one of Snape's targets. Mind Arts System, I want to ask, if I turn off gamer mode, can people like Snape read my mind? Asked Dudley. Host, since you've never learned Occlumency or other mind arts, those who are skilled in Legilimency can read your mind. Damn, so do I need to keep game mode on all the time? Asked Dudley. It is recommended to switch game mode on and off as needed. When you're about to look at Snape's face, turn it on immediately, and when you look away, you can turn it off. Okay, understood. One more thing, when you're controlling this body, can Snape read through you? Asked Dudley. Since both Professor Dumbledore and Professor Snape are very skilled in mind arts, they can read the thoughts of this body. However, the thoughts they perceive are altered. For example, when Snape looks into this body's eyes, he would see Dudley mocking his hairstyle, calling him things like Dungeon Bat, or taunting him as the loser who failed to marry Aunt Lily Evans, and other insults. Ha ha ha, no wonder I saw him get so angry in my memories, said Dudley. Correct, that last part was projected after the duel. System, can I learn mind arts on my own without a teacher? Asked Dudley. You can easily learn with the help of the system. Can I increase it with talent points? Dudley asked again. You can increase any magic you learn to the next level. Wow, nice. But if I turn on gamer mode and someone tries to read my mind, what will they see? Asked Dudley. It is not advisable for anyone to read the host's mind because the gamer mode will show something very terrifying. It appears as a vortex, spinning endlessly. A vortex? Endlessly? Dudley asked, confused. Correct. The mind arts will rebound, and anyone attempting to read your mind will be cursed. Cursed how? Asked Dudley. Host, do you know Uchiha Itachi? Itachi had the Tsukuyomi, and the effect on someone who fails to read your mind will be worse than what happened to Kakashi. Kakashi was affected by Itachi's Tsukuyomi. So, just be prepared. Wait, are you saying if Snape tries to read my mind, he'll faint? Asked Dudley. Correct. He will faint. Thinking that Snape will faint while looking at his eyes brought amusement to him. Draft of Peace. Dudley wondered why potions class was held in the dungeon. He had been a university student and had conducted several chemical experiments, so he understood the importance of safety. His first thought upon seeing the dungeon made him slap his forehead. Do wizards think magic can solve everything with a simple Evanesco? Dudley thought. Dudley, why did you slap your forehead? Justin asked. Ha ha ha, did you see that? Dudley replied. Just forget about it. regretting all that boasting about potions class. Justin teased. Let's go in before we lose points, Dudley advised. They entered the classroom and waited for Professor Snape. Suddenly, they heard footsteps. Thud, thud heavy, intimidating. For some reason, Professor Snape always liked to make a dramatic entrance. As soon as they saw him, he commanded in his usual cold tone, "Turn to page 5. Everyone quickly opened their books. The title on page 5 read, Draft of Peace. Now tell me, what is the purpose of the Draft of Peace, Finch Fletchley? Snape's voice turned sharp and intimidating. This was his usual tactic, making students panic. Last year, Dudley had been a target, but thanks to the AI system, he aced every question and brewed potions potent enough to make Professor Snape click his tongue in frustration. Because of this, Snape no longer targeted him, instead shifting his focus to Dudley's friends Justin, Susan, Hannah, and Ernie. But Hufflepuffs were resilient. Even when they were targeted, they didn't blame Dudley. The Draft of Peace is a calming potion that relieves anxiety and soothes agitation. It's a fairly advanced potion, Justin began, but Snape interrupted him. Mr. Textbook, I asked for the purpose of the Draft of Peace, not for you to read aloud, Snape sneered. Everyone frowned. Dudley couldn't help but slap his forehead in frustration. Slap. Snape's eyes zeroed in on Dudley. Oh, Dursley thinks it's best to slap himself, Snape said coldly. Dudley was momentarily stunned, then realized Snape was looking right at him. You asked for it, Dudley muttered before commanding internally, Game Mode, activate. Chapter 44, Chapter 44, Vortex. Disclaimer, Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 44, Vortex. Snape POV. What do you think about Lucius? Asked Dumbledore. He might openly show hostility toward Lily's son, but he won't go beyond the limit, Snape replied to Dumbledore. Snape, please ensure that Lucius doesn't exceed that limit, Dumbledore urged. Please look after our students. I will, don't worry, Snape promised, before heading to his dungeon to prepare for the next class. Hours later, Snape reflected on his morning, feeling a sense of satisfaction from tormenting the Potter boy. I win this time, Potter, Snape thought with a smirk. Teaching Potter's child gave him a twisted sense of fulfillment, a stark contrast to his own miserable student years at Hogwarts. But now, there was a new troublemaker to deal with, Dudley Dursley. Snape had tried various tactics to make his life miserable. After their duel, however, he realized this boy was not just a brawler, but a warrior. Even with only fourth-year spells, Dudley had managed to hold his ground against someone as experienced as Snape, who had dueled countless opponents. Snape had tried blackmailing him with punishments, but Dudley always found a way to avoid them. He had even attempted to expel the boy, but Dudley's academic excellence and lack of truly outrageous behavior, aside from their duel, kept him safe. Plus, as Harry Potter's cousin, expelling Dudley might prompt Harry to leave Hogwarts as well. The boy knew his power, and that made him bold. He showed Snape no respect, and it infuriated him. He even tried to read Dudley's mind using legilimency and was shocked by what he found. No wonder you're a loser, and my beautiful aunt didn't choose to marry you. Yet, just a greasy git who's too lazy to wash his underwear. These thoughts made Snape furious. Who had taught Dudley all of this? Did Petunia tell him about his past with Lily? Luckily, Harry Potter seemed oblivious to these details, but Dudley his cousin knew far more than he should. Today, as Snape heard Dudley slap his forehead during class, looking at him as though he were a fool, he felt his anger rise again. He stared into Dudley's eyes, intending to read his mind. Suddenly, Snape was pulled into a vortex. It felt like he was trapped inside a tornado, spinning non-stop. Hours turned into days, and after what felt like 3 days, he finally managed to escape from Dudley's thoughts. For some reason, his whole body ached, as if he had been physically trapped in that vortex. Plop! Snape, who had been standing and glaring at Dudley, suddenly collapsed. His energy was drained, and he felt pain and exhaustion all over his body. "You!" Snape muttered before fainting. "Oops, looks like the repelling force was stronger than I thought," Dudley mused. Little did he know, his actions today would become one of his biggest regrets. After this, none of the Death Eaters, especially Voldemort, would dare to try reading his mind again. Dumbledore worry. Everyone panicked when Professor Snape fainted in class, except Dudley. He knew exactly what had happened. The moment someone tried to read his mind while he was using Gamer Mind, they were immediately repelled. But this wasn't just a simple repulsion. Their magic would be tortured in a vortex, and all the pain would transfer to the caster. That's why Professor Snape had fainted. He couldn't endure the intense pain that felt like 3 days of suffering. It was almost like another version of the Cruciatus curse, but instead of affecting nerves like the curse that had damaged the Longbottoms, this pain was more internal. The story of Snape fainting during potions class and being taken to the infirmary spread through Hogwarts in a single day. Not just the students, but even Dumbledore was shocked and visited Snape to see if there were traces of dark magic. But there was none, only a simple repelling mechanism from the system. Lucius Malfoy, who heard about Snape's collapse, sought out his son. "What happened to Professor Snape?" Lucius asked Draco. "I heard from my friends that he was looking at Dudley Dursley before he fainted," Draco replied. "Hey? Impossible," Lucius said, astonished. Snape was an expert in mind arts. "What's impossible, father?" Draco asked. "There's no magic that can affect someone just by looking at them," Lucius replied before asking, "Did Dursley get caught using a wand?" "Nope, from what I heard, there were only books on the table, and Professor Snape always tells us to keep our wands away during class," Draco explained. "You're a good Slytherin," Lucius praised, making Draco smile proudly. After Draco left, Lucius returned home and went to meet the Dark Lord. Voldemort scared. "What? Severus fainted?" Voldemort was visibly shocked. "Yes, my lord," replied Lucius Malfoy. "Who was the last person he saw before he fainted?" asked Voldemort. "It was Dudley Dursley, Harry Potter's cousin," Lucius answered. "Dudley? I heard someone defeated Severus last year," Voldemort mused. "Correct, my lord. It was the same person who defeated him," Lucius confirmed. "Tell me how it happened," Voldemort demanded. "My son was being tormented by Dudley Dursley, and Severus tried to stop him. However, instead of backing down, Dudley confronted Severus. From what I've heard, Severus nearly lost the duel. He was only saved by the timely arrival of another professor," explained Lucius. "Dudley. Dudley." Voldemort muttered. "It seems we have another person to deal with." He then gave a firm order. "I don't want anyone else touching Dudley. I, Lord Voldemort, will personally see to his death." "Yes, my lord," Lucius agreed immediately. "Now, find out what happened to Severus. Inform him to meet me as soon as he wakes up," Voldemort commanded. 3 days later. Time skip. Severus Snape finally woke up after fainting. As his eyelids fluttered open, the first thing he saw was Professor Dumbledore. "Dumbledore!" Snape muttered weakly. "Severus, are you all right?" asked Professor Dumbledore with concern. "I was hit by something unknown," Snape revealed. "Something unknown?" Dumbledore repeated. "What was it?" "I tried to read Dudley Dursley's mind, but I was repelled and pulled into a vortex. I struggled to escape, but I was trapped in it for what felt like 3 days. Then I woke up here," Snape explained. "You used legilimency on a student?" Dumbledore asked with a frown. I tried to read his mind because something about him seemed different, Snape defended himself. Dumbledore sighed, clearly troubled. Did you discover anything? Dumbledore asked. I believe Dudley Dursley showed me only a fraction of what he's truly capable of. And I'm certain what happened to me was because of him, Snape answered grimly. Chapter 45, Chapter 45, It's Him. Disclaimer, Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 45, It's Him. Fraction of his power. Dumbledore repeated. Yes. I believe he's still hiding his true strength, Snape replied. Dumbledore, is there anything in the prophecy about the cousin? I suspect Dudley might be the real weapon to defeat the Dark Lord, unlike that Potter brat. It was true that Snape didn't like Dudley Dursley, not because of Harry, but because of his mother, Petunia Evans. Initially, Dudley seemed all right, he studied diligently, did his work quietly, and didn't show off his knowledge like his uncle, James Potter, or try to answer every question the teacher asked. However, things changed during Dudley's 4th year, particularly after Malfoy attacked him. Dumbledore stroked his beard, pondering about Dudley Dursley. The fact that Dudley had become a wizard was unexpected. Mrs. Figg had reported that the Dursley family was paranoid about magic and Petunia would have noticed if her son showed any signs of being magical. Yet for 11 years, they hadn't noticed a thing. Then, on Dudley's 11th birthday, the Book of Admittance recorded his name. This altered everything Dumbledore had planned for Harry. Instead of Hagrid, it was Professor McGonagall who brought Dudley to Hogwarts. While Harry went saving the people in the castle, Dudley kept his head buried in his books. Dumbledore had even asked the professors about Harry Potter, wondering if he possessed any hidden talents or magical power. The prophecy had spoken of a power the Dark Lord knew not, and after much consideration, Dumbledore believed it to be love, Harry's greatest strength. Love had saved him, and likely would again. Dudley is an exceptional student. Every professor tells me he's diligent and one of the most talented students in Hogwarts, Dumbledore said calmly. But he wasn't part of the prophecy. I understand, but I believe Dudley Dursley might surpass the Dark Lord, said Professor Snape. Why do you say that, Severus? Asked Dumbledore. Do you remember the last time I duelled him? Snape reminded. Yes, I remember. It was quite spectacular, Dumbledore replied. Indeed. Although it appeared to be a draw, I was actually close to losing the duel. It ended before he could defeat me, Snape admitted. Really? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled as he stroked his beard thoughtfully. Yes, I hate to admit it, but he didn't use any spells beyond a 4th year level, said Snape. If I had been able to apparate, I might have stood a chance. Lucius Malfoy. Severus, greeted Lucius Malfoy. Lucius, replied Snape, glancing up as Lucius approached. Do you have a message for me? Yes, I do, confirmed Lucius. Snape nodded, bracing himself for the inevitable summons. He wants to know why you fainted in class after looking at Harry Potter's cousin. He's summoning you to meet him, Lucius informed. Snape had anticipated that the Dark Lord would demand an explanation after what happened in potions class. He had already spoken to Dumbledore about confessing to the Dark Lord regarding Dudley's power. They both agreed it might sow more fear among the Death Eaters. The boy has better occlumency than I do, Snape admitted. You mean, you tried to read his mind? Lucius asked, visibly shocked. Yes. I attempted to, but I was repelled. In that moment, he managed to harm me, Snape confessed. What? How? Lucius asked, his amazement mixing with growing fear of Dudley. I hate to admit it, but Dudley Dursley is the greatest student I've ever taught, Snape said. You remember last year when I duelled him? Yes, my son was one of his victims, Lucius muttered bitterly. To be honest, I nearly lost, Snape revealed. What? You, the best duelist, almost lost? Lucius asked, incredulous. Correct. But the most frightening part is that he only used spells below a 4th year level. I was restricted, unable to apparate or use dark magic, Snape explained. Lucius frowned, deep in thought. As a friend, never look into his eyes and try to read his mind. He's dangerous, Snape warned. Lucius shivered at Snape's words. Thank you for the warning, replied Lucius, his voice tense. Class for 5th year. The defense against the dark arts, class started at the end of the week, meaning it was 5 days after Hogwarts had opened for the term. Unlike Potions class, which started early, was different. It began near the week's end, and this time, all the houses were combined because Lucius Malfoy was too lazy to separate the classes. So, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, and Slytherin sat together. Moreover, Lucius's job wasn't really to teach magic. His assignment was to weaken the Muggle-born students at Hogwarts. This approach worked for but not for Potions. In Potions, for example, Professor Snape had to make sure no potion went disastrously wrong, so he could cast Evanesco to vanish it before an explosion occurred. That's why in his class it is always Hufflepuff with Ravenclaw and Gryffindor with Slytherin. The smaller the class, the easier it was for him to spot if a student had brewed something incorrectly. Sometimes, though, he would let the potion explode, if the solution wasn't too dangerous, because Madame Pomfrey was there to fix any burns or other injuries. But if the potion was too hazardous and could cause serious harm, like the loss of a limb, he would vanish it before disaster struck. Draco Malfoy entered the classroom with a beaming smile. Of course, he was proud that his father was now a professor at Hogwarts. But little did he know, his father's tenure as a professor would soon stain the reputation of the Malfoy family. The Dark Lord had ordered Lucius not to teach the students, especially the Muggle-borns. As the class began, it was clear something was wrong. Keep your wands. We won't need them here, Lucius Malfoy announced. The students were shocked, even Draco was surprised. Some followed his order, while others, like Harry Potter, frowned. Now, open your books and turn to page 3, Lucius continued. The class progressed in an unusual manner. No, it wasn't normal at all. For half an hour, they just read from the textbook. There were no wand movements, no practical magic. Professor. Harry Potter spoke up. Raise your hand and name, Lucius said, clearly trying to irritate him. Harry raised his hand and said, Harry Potter. Yes, Mr. Potter. Lucius responded. Professor, don't we need to use our wands to fight dark wizards? Harry asked. No, you don't need a wand for that. The Ministry is capable of protecting you, Lucius replied dismissively. Before anyone could respond, a small chuckle echoed through the room. It looks like the House of Malfoy doesn't know how to use magic. Is that why you don't want us using our wands? Dudley Dursley asked. Lucius Malfoy froze. The voice sounded familiar, too familiar. His family, the Dark Lord, had been haunted by patroness messages almost every day before school began. It's him, Lucius muttered, his eyes narrowing as he glared at Dudley. Chapter 46, Death Eater Rewards. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 46, Death Eater Rewards. While Lucius Malfoy was lost in thought, Draco, who had heard Dudley's comment, fumed with anger. He stood up and glared at Dudley, wanting to curse him, but remembered his father's presence in the room. You, number %, was all Draco managed to mutter, struggling to restrain himself in front of Lucius. Normally, he would have called Dudley a mudblood, but he didn't want to tarnish the Malfoy family's name while his father was watching. The rest of the class didn't understand what Draco was trying to say. However, The outburst managed to snap Lucius out of his trance, and he turned to glare at Dudley with cold fury. In his anger, Lucius forgot Snape's warning. Without thinking, he locked eyes with Dudley and unconsciously attempted to read the boy's mind. That was the biggest mistake he could have made. Dudley had been ready and had activated his gamer's mind. Lucius was immediately pulled into a vortex. Inside, he felt his lungs being squeezed and his body torn apart by overwhelming magical forces. In a mere second, he collapsed, limp and unconscious. The entire class was stunned, especially the Slytherins, who couldn't believe that the mighty Lord Malfoy had fainted so suddenly. Draco, who had been filled with rage, was now shocked and terrified. His fear quickly turned back into anger. "You!" Draco pointed at Dudley, trembling with fury. "What have you done to my father?" He drew his wand, but before he could act, Harry raised his own wand, ready to defend his cousin. In an instant, it was like a domino effect. Almost every student from Gryffindor and Hufflepuff drew their wands as well. The Slytherins, not to be outdone, followed suit, wands at the ready, preparing for a showdown. Dudley, who had become the target of everyone's hostility, didn't draw his wand. Instead, he relied on his interface, where pressing the Y button activated a full Protego spell. It was faster than drawing his wand, a perk of having a gamer's mindset. Ding! You have defeated a member of the Dark Lord's inner circle. Before he could even check his reward, Dudley dismissed the notification. The situation in the classroom was too tense, and a full-blown duel was on the verge of erupting. "Draco Malfoy, I didn't do anything to your father," Dudley said calmly. "It was your father who tried to read my mind and was too weak to handle it." This only made Draco even angrier. Seething with rage, Draco raised his wand and cast a curse. "Stupefy!" Draco shouted. Dudley, prepared for such an attack, saw a yellow warning flash in his interface. He quickly pressed the Y button, triggering Protego. Since his Protego skill was maxed out, it not only blocked the spell but also sent two powerful projectiles back at the caster, enhanced to break through even the strongest shields. The Stupefy spell rebounded, hitting Draco and sending him crashing unconscious against the wall with double the force. The class fell silent, all eyes on Dudley. Dudley, feeling the weight of their stares, tried to explain. "What? I just repelled his curse," Dudley said, defending himself. The Slytherin students frowned, more of them reaching for their wands, ready for retaliation. "Hey, stop," Dudley called out. "Why don't you focus on helping the Malfoys and getting them to the infirmary?" The Slytherins, realizing there was no point in continuing the fight with both Malfoys unconscious, grudgingly decided to end the standoff. They rushed to carry Draco and Lucius to the infirmary, leaving the tension in the room to slowly dissipate. Mind arts. As the Slytherin students left, others began crowding around Dudley. "How did you do that?" they asked. "What did you do to Professor Malfoy?" someone from Ravenclaw added. More and more questions piled up, and Dudley, growing frustrated, gave a simple reply. "I was just protecting myself from someone who tried to curse me. I didn't do anything wrong," Dudley defended himself. Wanting to escape the attention and check his rewards in peace, Dudley quickly cleaned up his desk, packed his books into his bag, and made his way to leave the classroom. But Harry, sensing that Dudley didn't want to be in the spotlight, was faster. He followed right behind him. Susan didn't follow this time, noticing Harry was already with him. "Dudley," Harry called out after a minute. Dudley turned around and saw his cousin approaching, with Ron and Hermione trailing behind him. "Harry, what are you doing here?" Dudley asked, sounding a bit weary. "I understand why you did what you did," Harry said, "but what did you mean when you said Lucius Malfoy tried to read your mind?" Hermione looked at Dudley with curiosity, while Ron seemed mildly interested, waiting for an explanation. "Come here," Dudley said, grabbing Harry's hand and pulling him into an empty room, with Hermione and Ron following close behind. Once inside, Dudley cast mufflieto so no one could overhear their conversation. "Do you know about occlumency and legilimency?" Dudley asked. Harry and Ron looked confused, while Hermione, intrigued, spoke up. "What is that, Dudley?" "It's part of the mind arts. Some people are natural legilimens, they can read your thoughts just by looking into your eyes. Occlumency, on the other hand, protects your mind from being invaded by other wizards," Dudley explained. "Wait, wizards can read minds?" Harry asked, astonished. "Yeah. In fact, there are 3 people here who can do it. The first one is Professor Dumbledore, and the other 2, you can probably guess," Dudley said with a knowing look. "Bloody hell!" Ron exclaimed. "You mean Professor Snape and Malfoy?" "Exactly. What happened to them is because they tried to read my mind. But I was quick enough to defend myself, and they ended up injuring themselves in the process," Dudley replied. Harry paled as he listened. "No way! Has he always known what I was thinking?" Ron started to panic, while Hermione frowned, thinking deeply. She then turned to Dudley and asked, "Can you teach us mind arts magic?" "Maybe," Dudley said thoughtfully. "But I need to figure something out first." With that, he decided to leave the room, leaving them behind in silence. "Rewards time. System, show me my rewards," Dudley commanded. Ding! The rewards are as follows. Choose 1. A. Apparition. B. Mind Arts. C. Unsupported Flight. Dudley stared at the options in disbelief, muttering, "Bloody hell!" Chapter 47, Chapter 47, Flight Magic. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 47, Flight Magic. Dudley rubbed his eyes, trying to make sure he hadn't misread the game panel. "System, is this for real?" he asked, still in disbelief. "Host, everything listed on the game panel is true. You will instantly master the chosen magic." "Whoa, wait a minute. Before this, my game panel only offered talent points, senses, or stats. Why am I being offered magic now?" Dudley asked, confused. "Because the host managed to defeat one of the Inner Circle Death Eaters. This is considered a high-tier reward, which is why magic is now available. Please choose which one you want to learn. Each option guarantees instant mastery." "Are you kidding me?" Dudley said, still skeptical. "Host, I am not kidding." "All right, thanks for the rewards. But can I choose more than one? What if I pick one, can I get the same rewards next time?" Dudley asked rapidly. "No, host. The rewards are generated randomly. You can only choose one, and the list will close afterward." "Oh no, I really want 2 of these," Dudley begged. "Sorry, host. I cannot override my programming." "Okay, I get it. But before I decide, which magic can't I learn in this universe?" Dudley asked, thinking ahead. "Unsupported flight is the only magic you cannot learn. It does not exist in the novel version of this world, only in the game and movie versions." "Ugh, wait a minute. I really want both B and C. B is important to protect my mind, but C is just as crucial," Dudley muttered, struggling with the decision. "Host, please confirm whether you choose B or C. This is tough." "All right, I'll go with C. Unsupported flight," Dudley confirmed. Rewards are being distributed. Suddenly, Dudley felt new knowledge pouring into his mind, a combination of the floating spell and the experience of flight magic. He pulled out his wand and recited, "Volare Salutis," while performing the wand movement. His body began to float, and he could control the height of his levitation. Dudley tried to move but found himself stuck in place, merely hovering. He then cast another spell, Volans Libertas. At first, he remained static, but after casting the spell, he was able to move freely through the air, going wherever he wished. Didn't Voldemort make his flight magic appear dark? Dudley muttered. Raising his wand again, he said, Volatus coloris, and suddenly, his aura turned dark. The color of his flight aura depended on his thoughts. When he imagined black, it became dark; when he thought of warmth, it became light. Changing the color of flight magic was important because it helped him blend into the night sky, making it harder for others to see him. After testing his magic for about 5 minutes, Dudley released the spells and decided to leave the empty classroom. Meeting Dumbledore. Dudley, Professor Dumbledore wants to see you in the headmaster's office, said the Hufflepuff prefect. Okay, thank you, Dudley smiled. As he thought about meeting Dumbledore, Dudley sighed. I hope he won't try something foolish like reading my mind, he muttered. When he reached the door, he knocked. Come in, Dumbledore's voice called from inside. Thank you for seeing me, said Dudley as he entered. Oh, and you're here too, Professor Sprout and Professor McGonagall. He had expected Professor Sprout, but seeing Professor McGonagall surprised him since she was the head of Gryffindor, not Hufflepuff. They're here to discuss the recent incident, Dumbledore explained. All right, I understand, Dudley replied. So, is there anything you'd like to ask? Yes, we definitely have questions, McGonagall interjected. Please, go ahead, Dudley responded. It's regarding your altercation with Professors Snape and Malfoy, Dumbledore began. Eyewitnesses say you didn't do anything, just stared at them. Can you explain what really happened? Yeah, well, those so-called professors tried to read my mind, Dudley revealed. What? Both Professor McGonagall and Professor Sprout were shocked. I can't believe this. I need to speak with Snape, said Professor Sprout, getting visibly agitated. Dumbledore, sensing the need to steer the conversation, cut in. That doesn't answer the question, though. How did you manage to injure them? He asked, looking directly at Dudley. Well, you could say my mental defenses are quite strong. If someone tries to read my mind, I can, well, make them suffer in the moment of the intrusion, Dudley replied calmly. What? Professor Sprout and Professor McGonagall were once again taken aback. Yes, I can deflect a legilimency attack back onto the caster, Dudley confirmed. May I try reading your mind? Asked Professor Dumbledore, his tone serious. Albus! Professor McGonagall exclaimed, shocked at his willingness to test the limits of Dudley's mental powers. You can, Dudley said, but are you sure you can handle the consequences? I don't want to see a third professor sent to the infirmary. Since he'd entered Dumbledore's office, Dudley had carefully avoided making eye contact with the headmaster, aware of Dumbledore's mastery in legilimency. I can handle it, Dudley. Please, look at me, said Professor Dumbledore calmly. Well, you asked for it, Dudley thought. He silently commanded, Gamer Mode, activate. Dudley then locked eyes with Professor Dumbledore. The headmaster tried to delve into Dudley's mind, but like before, Dumbledore was pulled into a mental vortex, tortured by the same magical force that had overwhelmed Severus Snape and Lucius Malfoy. After a few seconds, Professor Dumbledore staggered and fainted. Albus! Dumbledore! Professor Sprout rushed to him, desperately trying to wake him, but her efforts were in vain. Professor McGonagall cast a finite incantatum, but Dumbledore remained unconscious. We need to get him to the infirmary, Dudley said, his tone serious. Congratulations on defeating the most powerful wizard of this century. But before the system could finish announcing his rewards, Dudley dismissed it with a wave of his hand. He had more pressing matters to deal with at the moment. Together, they carried Professor Dumbledore to the hospital wing. The news spread quickly through the school. Students were shocked when they realized the person being levitated to the infirmary was none other than Dumbledore himself. Rumors flew, with some speculating that the headmaster, over a century old, had finally reached his end. Madame Pomfrey had the most intense reaction when they arrived. "What happened to Professor Dumbledore?" she asked, rushing over. She cast several diagnostic spells, her expression growing more concerned. This is just like what happened to Professor Snape and Professor Malfoy," she said, then turned her gaze to Dudley. "Well, care to tell me what's really going on?" "What a drag," Dudley muttered, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Chapter 48, Chapter 48, Undefeated for 100 Years. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 48, Undefeated for 100 Years. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore was known as the next Merlin, the leader of the White Wizards, the defeater of Grindelwald and other grandiose titles. So, when Severus Snape told him about Dudley, how his attempt at legilimency had been repelled and left him injured, Dumbledore felt compelled to test it himself. He had never encountered anyone capable of defeating him in such matters, not even Grindelwald or Voldemort, both of whom had lost to him in duels, and another one was so scared to face him, despite his advanced age of over 100 years. It was the first time his control over legilimency had been thwarted, and by none other than Dudley Dursley's occlumency. Dumbledore was pulled into a vortex of pain. Realizing the danger, he tried to withdraw but found himself trapped, unable to escape. "This must be what Severus experienced," muttered Dumbledore as he tried to refocus on his occlumency, but his efforts were in vain. No matter how many barriers he erected, the vortex tortured him relentlessly. The agony was intense. Every few seconds, it felt as though something was being ripped from him, only for the pain to heal briefly before the cycle began again, burning, cutting, and searing him repeatedly. After what felt like 3 days trapped in the vortex, he was finally pushed out and returned to his office, gasping for breath before collapsing into unconsciousness. "Poor old man," sighed Dudley. He had warned Dumbledore, but the professor insisted on testing him. Now Dudley felt sympathy for the 100-year-old wizard. Could he survive this, or would this experience be too much for him? "Professor McGonagall, I think we need to send Professor Dumbledore to the infirmary. Be prepared, he may not wake up for a week," Dudley said, collecting his thoughts. "Yes, I'll send him," replied Professor McGonagall, snapping out of her shock. "But, Mr. Dursley, how did you manage to repel Professor Dumbledore?" It was hard to believe that a 15-year-old had countered the spell of one of the most legendary wizards. Well, that's a trade secret," Dudley said with a smirk. "Scared?" Lucius Malfoy woke up after 3 days, with his son Draco sitting by his side. "Draco, are you here?" Lucius asked. "Father, you're awake?" Draco replied, nearly in tears. "Yes, I am. What happened after I passed out?" Lucius inquired. "Father, that mudblood not only escaped punishment, but also put Professor Dumbledore into a coma," Draco revealed. "Dumbledore, in a coma?" Lucius was shocked. "Yes. After you fainted, he was summoned to meet Professor Dumbledore. Then rumors started spreading that he attacked Dumbledore and sent him to the infirmary," Draco explained. Lucius' eyes widened as he recalled what he had tried to do to the boy and Snape's warning. "Where is Professor Snape?" Lucius asked. "He's in his office," Draco replied, but before Lucius could ask further, the door opened. Severus Snape entered, looking at Lucius, who had just woken up. "Exactly 3 days, Snape muttered, though Lucius heard him. 3 days? Is that how long I've been in a coma?" Lucius asked. "Yes, you and Professor Dumbledore have both been in a coma for 3 days, Snape confirmed." "Wait, Professor Dumbledore is in a coma?" Lucius asked. "Where is he?" This was the perfect opportunity to eliminate Dumbledore. There was no one here except Draco, Lucius, and Severus. "He's being treated in his own office." They wouldn't risk treating him here while you're around, Snape replied. The truth was, Snape had suggested to McGonagall that Dumbledore be treated in his office, knowing that if Lucius woke early, he might attack Dumbledore in his weakened state. Both McGonagall and Madame Pomfrey agreed, taking turns to check on Dumbledore's condition in his office. Draco, overhearing the conversation between his father and Professor Snape, felt awkward. "Professor, why wouldn't they treat him here if my father was also here?" Draco asked. "Because Dumbledore knows your father's true identity," Snape replied. "Really?" Draco mused, pinching his chin thoughtfully. "Have you met our master?" Lucius asked. "Yes, I met with him and informed him about you and Dumbledore fainting after looking into Dudley's eyes," Snape replied. "Now, everyone in our group has been warned not to attempt legilimency on the boy." "Good," Lucius said, though suddenly something came to mind. "I need to meet with our master." "Why the rush? You just woke up." "Take a moment before heading to him," Snape advised. "No, it's important," Lucius insisted, but before he could leave, Madame Pomfrey appeared at the door. "Hold on. I need to check your condition before I decide if you can go," she said firmly. "Who are you to stop me?" "I'm Lord Malfoy," Lucius declared pompously. Madame Pomfrey sighed, deciding not to indulge his attitude. Her attention then turned to Draco, who was still lingering in the infirmary. "And you, next time, don't let your father come here when he's like this." Draco's face reddened with anger and embarrassment, but since Madame Pomfrey held a position of authority like the professor's, he had no choice but to swallow his pride. "Voldemort." "My lord, I have news to share," said Lucius as he arrived at Voldemort's base. "Lucius, I heard you fainted because of that boy. Is it true?" Voldemort asked. "Yes, it's true. His magic is so powerful that even I, along with Albus Dumbledore, couldn't break through his defenses," Lucius admitted. So, what news are you bringing this time?" Voldemort inquired. "I've discovered the identity of the person who sent the Patroness to you," Lucius replied. Voldemort, who had been frowning earlier, now smiled. "Good, good. So, who was it? Who dared to send a patroness to me?" Voldemort asked, his desire for vengeance clear. "It was Dudley Dursley," Lucius revealed. "Him? How do you know?" Voldemort asked, surprised. "I recognized his voice," replied Lucius confidently. You've done well," Voldemort said, clearly pleased for the first time with Lucius. "You deserve a reward." A rare smile formed on Voldemort's face as he considered what Lucius had just revealed. Chapter 49, Nargles. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 49, Nargles. Dudley 3 days ago POV. After leaving the infirmary, Dudley opened his game status panel. "System, please show me my reward." "Congratulations, host. You are the first person to defeat the most powerful wizard of this century. You may choose 2 out of 5 rewards. These rewards are copied from Albus Dumbledore's skill set. 1 Mind Arts, 2 Alchemy, 3 Dark Arts, 4 Transfiguration, 5 Memory and Dual Experience. Warning: you may experience love or bloodlust if you copy memories from a wizard." Dudley's eyes lit up as he looked at the reward options. Today, he had the chance to gain abilities beyond what existed in this universe, and this time was a direct copy of Dumbledore's skills. But then his attention was drawn to the warning. "System, about the memory, if the person was heartbroken and let's say I copied Severus Snape's memory, would I be heartbroken like him?" asked Dudley. "Correct, host. It is not advisable to copy memories, even from very powerful wizards. For example, Severus Snape or Voldemort. You might fall in love with someone you've never met, or you could become a serial killer. Hearing this, Dudley hesitated. If he chose option 5, he'd inherit most of Dumbledore's skills but risk becoming an anxious old man. He still remembered the first time he received Dudley's original memories, how he suddenly loved Petunia and Vernon like his real parents. No way was he choosing option 5, even if the rewards were tempting. System, I choose rewards number 1 and number 2, said Dudley. As you wish. It will take approximately 1 minute to transfer all the data. Transfer complete. He could feel it, the knowledge of alchemy flooding his mind, knowledge that only 100-year-old wizards possessed. Then suddenly, he remembered something. Didn't he already have Gamer's mind? Why did he need to copy Dumbledore's mind arts? System, can I reselect my rewards? Asked Dudley. I'm sorry, host. The rewards are non-refundable. Please complete more hidden quests to earn more rewards. Oh no! Dudley groaned. If he'd chosen Dumbledore's dark arts mastery, he might have been on par with the Dark Lord. Why did I choose this useless mind arts? He regretted his decision, realizing too late that Dumbledore's real strength lay in his mastery of transfiguration and his knowledge of the dark arts. Grinding. After gaining alchemy knowledge copied from Dumbledore, Dudley finally understood the difference between potions and alchemy. In modern terms, potions were akin to pharmacy, where one studies to create medicine for patients. Alchemy, on the other hand, was closer to chemical engineering, something Dudley had studied before being thrown into the world of Harry Potter. System, can I get the same reward if I beat Dumbledore again using Gamer's mind? Asked Dudley. Searching. Bug detected. Fixing. Complete. Host can no longer use Gamer Mind to earn rewards from defeating Dumbledore. Dudley was dumbfounded. That meant earlier, he could have exploited the loophole to defeat Dumbledore using Gamer's Mind. But now that the system detected it, that opportunity was gone. Are you kidding me? Dudley half shouted in frustration. No, I am not kidding. The rewards from Dumbledore have been fixed, and you can no longer earn rewards through that method. What? Don't tell me that if I defeat Snape or even Lucius, I won't get my rewards, asked Dudley, concerned. Only Dumbledore's reward has been blocked because it was easy to trick him. You can still earn rewards from defeating Lucius Malfoy and Severus Snape as many times as you can beat them. I shouldn't have asked you about this, sighed Dudley. He now regretted bringing it up. If he could have just kept defeating Dumbledore for high-quality rewards, he would have. After all, Dumbledore was classified as a legendary wizard, and the rewards were top tier. What if I defeat Dumbledore in a duel? Can I still get a reward? Asked Dudley. Yes, host. You can earn a reward after defeating Dumbledore in a duel. The only restriction is that you can't use Gamer's Mind to incapacitate him and gain rewards through that method. Do you mean I can't use Gamer's Mind at all? Asked Dudley. Host can use Gamer's Mind to protect yourself, but if Albus Dumbledore attempts to read your mind and collapses as a result, your reward will be cancelled. Why? Just tell me why, Dudley demanded. Because the power of Gamer's Mind is too strong. Even if Merlin himself tried to read your mind, he would collapse. It wouldn't be fair to use the same trick twice. Dudley could only sigh. Now, he just had to focus on something else, grinding his levels and earning more rewards. But first, he needed to head to the room of requirement, as there was still a Horcrux hidden there. On his way to the 7th floor, he unexpectedly ran into someone, the most popular girl aside from Hermione. Yes, it was Luna Lovegood, and she wasn't wearing any shoes. What are you doing here? Dudley asked. Oh, hi. I know you, replied Luna with a smile. Thanks. But why aren't you wearing shoes? Dudley asked, puzzled. My shoes were stolen by Nargles and they put them over there, Luna said, pointing somewhere. Nargles. Well, this girl is something else, and probably the only one who might have mage sight, Dudley thought. Ding! Congratulations, host! You've met the only person who can almost see the whispers of magic. Reward, plus 4 cents. Dudley was dumbfounded and wanted to ask the system something, but Luna interrupted him. Whoa! I've never seen this before. The nargles are concentrated right in front of you, forming some kind of pages, Luna exclaimed. You can see this? Dudley pointed toward the screen. Luna nodded. Nargles usually disturb humans, but this is the first time I've seen them in such a concentrated form. Really? Dudley said, then burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha. Why are you laughing? Asked Luna, clueless. I can see nargles too, Dudley replied with a grin. Luna's eyes lit up and a big smile spread across her face. She asked excitedly, I thought I was the only one who could see nargles. This is serious, you need this. Luna handed Dudley some sort of necklace. Hey? What's this? Dudley asked. Nargles are afraid of this necklace, they scared to see something sharp. It'll help if you wear it. Too many nargles can affect your mind, Luna explained. Chapter 50, Malfoy Hatred. Disclaimer, Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 50, Malfoy Hatred. Really? They're afraid of this? Asked Dudley. Try it first, urged Luna. Okay, I'll try. Dudley took the necklace, hold it on his hand and teased Luna. See, they're still here. Luna pinched her chin, falling into deep thought. You're right, they didn't even try to move. Maybe I need a sharper necklace so they are becoming more afraid, said Luna. Haha, you're funny. But before we continue, let's introduce ourselves, suggested Dudley. Hi, my name is Dudley Dursley. Oh yeah, I forgot. Well, I'm Luna Lovegood, and I know about you, the famous cousin of Harry Potter, Luna introduced herself. Ding! Congratulations, host! You have received a greeting full of pure blood family etiquette. Rewards, knowledge of pure blood customs. One of the pure blood etiquettes is that a woman won't touch or offer her hand to a man, even when introducing herself. Unlike British customs, there's a distinct difference between Muggle and Wizarding society. This is the rule for witches, but for wizards, it's different. For example, Draco Malfoy offered his hand to Harry Potter while mentioning his family name. That gesture meant Draco acknowledged Harry as being of equal status to the Malfoy family. When Harry rejected the offer in front of everyone, it signaled that the Potter family looked down on the Malfoys. No wonder Draco became so obsessed with Harry Potter. Every year, they fought, and Harry, newly introduced to the wizarding world, didn't understand this custom, and it is one of the reasons he was being mocked by Slytherin. Hearing the system's ding, Dudley finally pieced together with the knowledge of pure blood and why Draco Malfoy was so fixated on Harry. Oh my, I've never seen nargles attacking someone's brain, exclaimed Luna. You're in a dangerous situation. Luna panicked, as this was the first time she'd seen nargles attacking someone's brain. Usually, she only saw them surrounding people, sometimes changing color, or they are grouped and become large in numbers. She could only see 1% of the whisper of magic, so her eyes perceived different creatures. For example, Dudley saw a screen, while Luna saw something like a bat. Luna also couldn't control ancient magic like Dudley, which explained why they saw things differently. Luna, don't worry, Dudley tried to calm her down. I want to calm down, but the nargles are attacking you, Luna said while searching through her bag for another necklace. Seeing this, Dudley took out his wand, pointed it at the screen, and mentally ordered the status screen to disappear. How? Luna was so surprised. The nargles in front of Dudley suddenly vanished, completely gone. There wasn't a single one left. Did you see nargles attacking me? Asked Dudley, smirking. How did you do it? Luna asked, excited. Haha, actually, what you saw wasn't a nargle. It was the whisper of magic, said Dudley. Whisper of magic. My father said it was nargles. Luna tried to defend her belief. Well, what you saw may look like nargles, but what I saw was something more, Dudley explained in a way Luna might understand. Something more? What do they really look like? Asked Luna. Well, if someone has the ability to control nargles, they can use them to perform magic, revealed Dudley. What? You can use nargles for magic? Luna exclaimed. Yes. While you can only see them but can't touch them, am I right? Asked Dudley. Yes, unfortunately, I can't, Luna admitted. You see them as creatures, but I see them in a different form, said Dudley. What is the real form of nargles? Asked Luna, curious. Nargles aren't creatures, they are the whisper of magic. To you, they appear as creatures, but what I see are words and pages, said Dudley. Luna's eyes widened before she smiled. To be honest, I've never really understood what I saw since I was young. My parents couldn't see them. This is the first time I've met someone who can see the same thing as me, confessed Luna. Well, now you've found me, Dudley smiled. Yeah, thank you for explaining the nargles. I need to tell my father about this, said Luna. By the way, do you want to be my friend? Asked Dudley, trying to recruit her. Luna, thinking she misheard, asked, could you repeat that? Luna Lovegood, I want to be your friend. Would you like to be mine? Dudley asked, clearly amused. You want to be my friend? Luna exclaimed. Yeah, you don't want to, replied Dudley. No, I want to. I've never had a male friend, Luna smiled. Well, now you have one, Dudley commented. What do friends usually do? Asked Luna. I have a friend, Ginny Weasley. Sometimes we do gardening together. Dudley felt pity for Luna. Was this girl like a second Harry Potter? Well, a friend is someone who helps for free. For example, your shoes, Dudley pointed at her shoes stuck to the ceiling. Yeah, those are my shoes, replied Luna. Oxio. Dudley cast a summoning spell, bringing the shoes into his hand. This is one example. Friends help each other when they're in trouble, said Dudley. Thank you, Dudley. I'm glad to be your friend, replied Luna. Another thing is, friends correct each other when they're wrong, added Dudley. What? Am I doing something wrong? Asked Luna. Yes. Nargles don't steal shoes, Dudley said seriously. Before handing over the shoes, Dudley engraved them with a rune. Dudley, what's the rune for? Asked Luna. This rune can be activated by your voice. If you lose your shoes again, you can call them back. And if anyone tries to hide them, their hands will be marked with magical residue, Dudley explained. A rune? I've never heard of this kind before. Will I learn it this year? Asked Luna. By the way, I'm taking runes in my elective class. Glad to hear you've chosen a good subject, but you won't find this rune in any textbook. I created it myself. If you want to learn, you can come to me, offered Dudley. Chapter 51, Animagus. Disclaimer, Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 51, Animagus. Today was the day Professor Dumbledore woke up from his magical coma, and it was also the day Hufflepuff and Gryffindor shared a class together. Naturally, Dudley was excited to see his cousin, Harry Potter. As he entered the classroom, he noticed the Golden Trio suddenly stiffen upon seeing him. Well, it looks like they're afraid of me, Dudley thought. Hi, my dearest cousin, Dudley greeted as he walked toward where Harry was sitting with Hermione and Ron in the Transfiguration room. Oh, hi Dudley, replied Harry Potter. Hey, Dudley, greeted Ron, his face paled. Hermione just glared at Dudley, opened her mouth as if to say something, but then closed it. "Do you guys have something to talk to me about?" asked Dudley after noticed they tried to hide something. "We heard you sent Professor Dumbledore to the infirmary," replied Harry. "You're sick, mate," commented Ron. "We get why you went after Snape, but why would you attack Professor Dumbledore?" "Be quiet, Ron," Hermione interjected, trying to defend Dudley. "He must have had a reason." Harry nodded in agreement. "Shut up, you're just like him," Ron muttered. Dudley never liked Ron in the first place. He had even read fanfictions about Ron leaking secrets after Voldemort's defeat. At first, they were hailed as heroes for defeating the Dark Lord, but one day Ron, addicted to his newfound fame, accidentally let slip the secret of Horcruxes to the media. Well, the thing is not accidentally, he just can't control his hormone. What seemed like a small mistake snowballed and soon the Dark Lords began popping up like mushrooms. Wizards across the world got bolder and started creating Horcruxes. France had 2 Dark Lords, America had 1 and nearly every other country had 1 or 2. Even though it was just fanfiction, the probability of Ron doing something like that is high enough, thought Dudley. Should I separate them early and only include Harry and Hermione in the war? Professor Dumbledore wanted to test my mind arts, Dudley explained. That's why he called me to his office, but my magic was stronger than he expected, which is why he fainted. What? The Golden Trio was visibly shocked. Yeah, it wasn't my intention to hurt him. Do you really think I'd attack Professor Dumbledore and the school didn't even punish me and here I am not getting expelled? Dudley asked. Ron mumbled. Last year, you attacked Snape and didn't get expelled either. That was self-defense, Dudley countered. Anyway, I wanna sit with my fellow Hufflepuffs. Bye. As Dudley walked over to his new Hufflepuff friends, he overheard Ron's comment. Harry, even though he's your cousin, he's dangerous. Don't you remember what he did last year or when he used to bully you? Ron tried to convince Harry. Well, I didn't expect Ron to become hostile toward me, thought Dudley. Dudley decided not to let Ron Weasley enter his circle, he must prevent Harry talk to Ron about Horcruxes. Animagus. Now I regret choosing mind arts over transfiguration, thought Dudley. Did something happen to you, Dudley? Asked Ernie Macmillan. Do you want to become an animal? Replied Dudley. Hearing this, Ernie felt angry. What do you mean by that, Dudley? Do you want to fight? Said Ernie. Yeah, what do you mean by fighting? Asked Justin. Dudley, hearing this, could only slap his forehead in frustration. I mean, do you want to become an animagus like Professor McGonagall? Replied Dudley. Oh, you mean become a cat? Asked Justin. Of course, I want to. Do you know how to become an animagus? Added Ernie. Well, if you want, said Dudley, before being cut off by Professor McGonagall. Mr. Dursley and Mr. Macmillan, what are you two discussing? She asked sternly. We're discussing how to become Animagi, replied Dudley. Suddenly, everyone stopped their incantations and stared at Dudley. Even Professor McGonagall's mouth fell open as she looked at him. Mr. Dursley, meet me after school, said Professor McGonagall. Okay, Professor, Dudley replied with a smile. Professor, Hermione raised her hand. Yes, Miss Granger. Professor McGonagall responded with a smile. Can I join Dudley too? She asked. Like a domino effect, when Hermione asked to be included, everyone in the class suddenly wanted to become Animagi, including Ron Weasley. Professor. Please. Professor. What is an Animagi? It is animagus. Oh, you mean like Professor Cat form? Professor. The students' voices grew louder and louder, forcing Professor McGonagall to yell. Silence. The entire class fell quiet. Good. Now listen to me. Those who manage to transfigure their rat into a goblet made of metal, wood, or glass will be invited, said Professor McGonagall. Really? Yes. What are we waiting for? Everyone eagerly flicked their wands, trying to transfigure their rats into goblets made of metal. Dudley succeeded on his first try, earning 10 points for Hufflepuff. Hermione followed, earning 5 points for Gryffindor, but the rest of the students failed. Metamorphmagus. Everyone returned to their respective dormitories, except for Hermione Granger and Dudley Dursley. I didn't expect you to be interested in becoming an animagus, Mr. Dursley, said Professor McGonagall. Just call me Dudley, Professor, Dudley replied. McGonagall smiled, but she didn't respond directly. She just kept smiling. Of course, she might call him Dudley if they were closer, perhaps after he finished his studies at Hogwarts. But for now, being the professional she was, she preferred to call him Mr. Dursley. It was different with Hermione Granger. Sometimes she would call her simply Granger or Miss Granger. Miss Granger, I believe you and Mr. Dursley will be able to become animagi, said Professor McGonagall. Hermione smiled. I will guide you through the process, McGonagall continued as she walked to her desk, picked up some books, and handed them to Hermione and Dudley. Here are the details on how to become animagi. Thank you, Professor, they both replied. Becoming an animagus is extremely difficult, and only a few wizards manage to achieve it. Some who attempt it without proper supervision are permanently disabled because their bodies get stuck and cannot return to human form, warned McGonagall. Vampires, werewolves, and metamorph magi cannot become animagi. Dudley was shocked to hear that metamorphmagus couldn't become animagus. Chapter 52, Chapter 52, Werewolf Treatment. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 52, Werewolf Treatment. Professor, Dudley raised his hand. Yes, Mr. Dursley, replied Professor McGonagall. Why can't metamorphmaguses become animagi? Dudley asked. Nice question, Mr. Dursley, McGonagall smiled. First of all, metamorphmagus and animagus are two different abilities. They can't coexist in the same body. A metamorphmagus can change their appearance at will without using polyjuice potion, whereas an animagus can transform into an animal and inherit some of that animal's abilities. Oh, I see, Dudley replied, then continued, Professor, is it true that becoming an animagus makes us immune to werewolf attacks? McGonagall's eyes widened, and she fell silent for a moment before Hermione spoke up. Yes, I was there when Sirius was attacked by Remus, said Hermione. Attacked? When? McGonagall asked, her face turning pale. It was during our third year. Remus turned into a werewolf, and Sirius got injured by him, explained Hermione. What? Professor McGonagall clearly hadn't known this. So there is a benefit to becoming an animagus, Dudley said, trying to shift the conversation. It makes us immune to the werewolf curse. Everyone fell silent, deep in thought. Professor, I've decided not to become an animagus, Dudley suddenly declared, wanting to keep his metamorphmagus ability a secret. Even in Sun Tzu's Art of War, Chapter 1, Verse 18, it says, all warfare is based on deception. There's also a famous saying, to fool an enemy, you need to fool your friends first, because there might be a spy among them. Dudley decided to keep his metamorphmagus ability as a secret trump card. The only person who can change their appearance at will is Tonks, but her magic is unstable. Her emotions directly affect her metamorphmagus abilities. But Dudley's magic was perfect, it wasn't affected by emotions, only by intent, which guided his magic to change his appearance. Why, Dudley? Asked Hermione, wide-eyed. Personal preference, Dudley replied. Hearing his answer, Hermione rolled her eyes. Are you sure, Mr. Dursley? Professor McGonagall asked for confirmation. Yes, I'm sure, Dudley replied confidently. Professor McGonagall sighed at Dudley's answer. Okay, if that's your wish, there's nothing I can do to change it. But there's something I want to ask, Dudley said. If becoming an animagus can prevent a werewolf from cursing you and turning you into one of them, why hasn't anyone tried to turn werewolves into animagi? This question was valid, and even Professor McGonagall, who was an animagus, had never thought of it. Maybe because before Sirius, no animagus had ever been attacked by a werewolf, said Hermione. I want to help. I want to try to invent a cure to turn werewolves into animagi, Dudley said confidently. Really, replied Professor McGonagall in disbelief, but then she decided to trust him. Mr. Dursley, if anyone else said that, I might not believe it, but I know you're one of the best students at Hogwarts. I place my hope on your shoulders. Can I join your research? Hermione asked. I'm glad you want to help, Hermione, Dudley replied with a smile. Hermione POV. After parting ways with Dudley, Hermione headed to Gryffindor Tower while Dudley went to the Hufflepuff basement. As she walked towards the portrait, she remembered Dudley's promise to include her in his research. Smiling, she happily made her way, eager to meet Harry and Ron. Draco Lapunus, Hermione said to the portrait. The portrait swung open, and she entered the Gryffindor Tower. Inside, she found Harry and Ron, clearly waiting for her while playing wizard chess. Upon seeing her, they asked, Hermione, did Professor McGonagall agree to teach you how to become an animagus? Harry asked. Hermione smiled and answered, yes, she even gave me this book. She showed the book to her friends. Wow, that's great. I'm glad you got the chance to become an animagus, replied Harry. Teacher's pet, Ron said, sounding jealous. You're just jealous, Ronald Weasley, Hermione replied with a smirk. You're the one who's jealous. Ron tried to defend himself. Gotcha. Why would I be jealous of you? Hermione asked with innocent eyes. Because I'm better at Quidditch than you, Ron blurted out, speaking nonsense. Ha 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 ha. Hermione laughed. Wait, guys, be quiet, Harry tried to stop the nonsense. Hermione and Ron decided to end their argument, though Ron was still fuming. What did my cousin Dudley say? Harry asked. He's interested, but he doesn't want to become an animagus, Hermione replied. What? Why? Both Harry and Ron were surprised by Dudley's decision. I don't know, but he also said there might be a cure for werewolves, Hermione added. What? How? Asked Harry, while Ron tried to process the information. Do you remember our third year? Hermione asked. When Sirius was trying to protect us from Remus. Yes, we remember, Harry replied. Oh, remembering that makes my leg itch for some reason, Ron added. Yes, remember how Remus attacked Sirius, but Sirius didn't turn into a werewolf even though the wound was deep. Hermione explained. Harry's eyes lit up as he grasped what Hermione was implying, while Ron remained confused. Are you saying that being an animagus can cure werewolves? Harry asked, and Ron finally understood. Yes, Dudley thinks there might be a cure for werewolves. If he can help Remus become an animagus, Remus could possibly be cured, and his curse would vanish, Hermione explained. Dudley POV. To create a cure for werewolves, Dudley needed a lab, and for that, he had to go to the room of requirement. Fortunately, the location of the room was well known, situated on the 7th floor. Upon arriving at the entrance, he also decided to search for the Horcrux. While doing so, he planned to lift the curse Voldemort had placed on the Defense Against the Dark Arts position. Is it a good idea to let Lucius Malfoy escape from the curse? Dudley thought. But didn't Voldemort lift the curse for Snape? He ultimately decided just to retrieve the Ravenclaw's diadem Horcrux. Standing in front of the room of requirement, he walked past the wall 3 times while thinking consistently. I need a room to hide something. I need a room to hide something. I need a room to hide something. After the 3rd pass, the door materialized, and Dudley knew he had succeeded. For added security, he activated gamer mode and cast a spell. Revelio. His version of the Revelio charm was more advanced, it could detect anyone hiding behind walls, unlike the standard Revelio, which could only dispel the disillusionment charm. Chapter 53, Chapter 53, Azkaban. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 53, Azkaban. My lord, our army has arrived, said the masked man. Good. Now is the time to rescue them, Voldemort grinned. He had heard from Barty Crouch Jr. about the Lestrange family's loyalty, how they stood by him even after his downfall. The other Death Eaters had been captured during raids, their identities exposed early on. But the Lestranges were different. Their identities had not been revealed, yet they chose to search for him, and in doing so, they exposed themselves. Suddenly, dozens of Dementors noticed them. They flew rapidly, preparing to attack the intruders. Seeing the Dementors approaching, some of the Death Eaters nearly panicked. They couldn't use a Patronus and no dark wizard they knew could either. To counter Dementors, wizards needed to cast a Patronus, but Voldemort was different. Despite the chilling presence of the Dementors, Voldemort stood unfazed, using his occlumency to endure it. Food. Intruders. Let's eat. The ghostly voices of the Dementors echoed, filling the air with dread. Sensing the danger, Voldemort acted before it was too late. He waved his wand, and from its tip, black fire erupted, encircling him and his Death Eaters. It was Protego Diabolica, an advanced protective dark magic once used by Gellert Grindelwald. The Dementors, feeling the immense power radiating from the black fire, hesitated. Though they were immune to ordinary fire, this was different. The fire emitted the strongest dark magic they had ever encountered, and they dared not get close. Fire. Dark magic. Too strong. Retreat. The thousands of Dementors, who had nearly overwhelmed Voldemort and his army, retreated. Seeing this, Voldemort directed his magic guiding the black fire, surrounding the fleeing Dementors. We are being attacked. Counterattack. Identify the human. But Voldemort raised his wand and used Sonorous to amplify his voice. I am Voldemort, here to offer you freedom, he announced. At this, the Dementors halted. One of their leaders floated forward to meet him. Freedom, the Dementor rasped. Yes. You have been controlled by the Ministry of Magic, unable to feed as you wish. But if you serve me, I will offer you Muggles and blood traders as your source of food, Voldemort offered. Interesting. Yes, this human is interesting. Shall we accept? Humans always threaten us with light spells. I think we should reject him. Shut up. Let the leader decide. How can we trust you, human? Asked the leader of the Dementors. Voldemort never lies to his followers. I will let you feast on the Aurors guarding this castle, replied Voldemort. Aurors. There isn't a single Auror who enjoys guarding Azkaban. The place is cold and filled with dark energy. Every time they come here, the Dementors drain their happiness, forcing them to relive their most painful memories. It feels as though they are the ones being punished, constantly having to visit this prison. Their real job is to oversee the Dementors, while the Dementors guard the prisoners. The reason they clock into Azkaban is to monitor any anomalies among the Dementors, who are dangerous creatures. The only thing that can repel them is the Patronus charm. Most of the people working here are half-blood and Muggle-born wizards. There are no purebloods serving as Azkaban guards. Today, David is the only Muggle-born wizard on duty, while the other 3 are half-bloods. Due to their lack of connections with anyone of high status, they were forced to work as Azkaban guards. They usually work a bit away from Azkaban, staying in a small watchtower where the depressing magic radiating from the Dementors doesn't reach them. One of them suddenly felt annoyed and ordered David to get food. "Hey, you! Go buy some food," one of them commanded. David, hearing this, could only grit his teeth. As the only Muggle born, he knew the others, being half-bloods, held a slightly higher status than him. Not wanting to cause a scene, he quietly went out and operated to Hogsmeade to fetch food. "Look at that idiot! We're lucky to have someone like him. Ha ha ha!" Their laughter quickly died down when the temperature suddenly dropped. "What the heck do those creatures want now? Why are they coming here?" One of them waved his wand and cast Expecto Patronum. A small rat-shaped Patronus appeared, providing a bit of warmth to the wizard. "Let's see what those creatures are after." They stepped out of the watchtower, ready to confront the Dementors. But their irritation quickly turned to fear when they spotted the bald man standing nearby. "Impossible, could it be? You know who has really returned? Death Eater's prisoner." "My lord, I always believed you would return," Bellatrix Lestrange cried, tears streaming down her face. 4 months ago, they had all felt it their Dark Lord's return when their dark marks grew darker, and one day, they were being summoned. The mark that had long been cold suddenly become hot. This is the sign that Voldemort had returned. Bellatrix Lestrange, Rodolphus Lestrange, Robistan Lestrange, Antonin Dollahove, Mulciber, Augustus Rookwood, Jugsun, Traverse, Electo Caro, and Amicus Caro were among the most loyal Death Eaters imprisoned in Azkaban. Seeing their Dark Lord again reignited the hope that had long diminished. Though they were the most faithful among the Death Eaters, after more than 10 years in prison, even they had begun to accept that Voldemort might truly be dead. Voldemort moved from cell to cell, releasing each prisoner, until he reached Dolores Umbridge. "Isn't this the woman who tried to kill Harry Potter?" Voldemort asked, his voice cold. "Yes, my lord. Her name is Dolores Umbridge. She was imprisoned after her identity as a half-blood was exposed," a Death Eater explained. Dolores, hearing this, saw a chance to escape the horrors of Azkaban. "My lord, please allow me to serve in your army," Dolores begged. "A half-blood, in my army?" Voldemort replied, his tone dripping with mockery. "I despise Muggles and have done unspeakable things to them," Dolores pleaded, trying to prove her worth. Voldemort glanced at his Death Eaters, his eyes silently seeking confirmation. "She was imprisoned for torturing Muggles and Mudbloods," one of the Death Eaters answered. A smile spread across Voldemort's face as he turned his gaze back to Dolores. "Good. I will give you one chance. Your future depends on your performance," Voldemort said. "Thank you, my lord," Dolores smiled, her voice filled with relief. Chapter 54, Chapter 54, Dementor Rebellion. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 54, Dementor Rebellion. Magical Law Enforcement Office. Amelia Bones was in a meeting with Nymphadora Tonks, Mad-Eye Moody and Kingsley Shacklebolt discussing about Voldemort when an Auror suddenly interrupted. "Madam Amelia, something terrible has happened," reported the Auror, his face pale. "What happened, Vigor?" asked Amelia Bones. "Azkaban. Azkaban has been breached," Vigor reported, his voice shaky. "What?" Everyone in the room was shocked. "Tell me exactly what happened there," Amelia asked again, her tone urgent. "David, the Auror stationed at Azkaban, reported that the prisoners have broken out. 3 other Aurors have been kissed by Dementors, and the Dementors, they've left Azkaban," Vigor explained. "What?" The other Aurors stood up, visibly shaken by the news. "You mean the Dementors have rebelled against the Ministry?" asked Mad-Eye Moody, narrowing his eyes. "Yes," replied Vigor. "Summon this David. Bring him here with his personal information that located in the room number 10, ordered Amelia. Within minutes, the aura returned with a parchment and David Sterning himself. Amelia took the parchment and quickly read through it. Name, David Sterning. Age, 21 years old. Current position, Guard of Azkaban. After about 2 minutes, she put down the parchment and looked at David, who was pale and trembling with fear. I've read what happened to your colleagues. Now, tell me what really happened there, Amelia ordered. David recounted everything, including how he had been mistreated as an Auror because of his Muggle-born status. All right, I believe you, said Amelia. Give him some chocolate. The rest of you, let's go to Azkaban. Azkaban. The atmosphere at Azkaban was brighter than before. Normally, it was filled with dark energy due to the presence of Dementors, but since they had abandoned the prison, the dark magic had left with them. Form teams of 3 and search the nearby prison and surrounding. Look for any magical signatures, Amelia ordered. The Aurors quickly organized into groups of 3 and began searching outside, while Amelia entered the prison to assess the damage. She soon discovered that all of the prisoners convicted as Death Eaters had escaped. Turning to the Aurors escorting her, she spoke aloud, "It seems Harry Potter's claim about the Dark Lord returning is true." "Madam." One of the Aurors started, but Amelia cut him off. "What?" Some Aurors were in denial, while others appeared fearful, but a few showed no reaction at all. Amelia silently noted these individuals Aurors from pure-blood families, whom she suspected of being untrustworthy or potential Death Eater sympathizers. The First Wizarding War against Voldemort had taught her that purebloods were often spared by Voldemort, with some, like Barty Crouch Jr., being part of his inner circle. Thanks to seeing the memory of Harry Potter, she had become more matured and clever. Suddenly, the team of Aurors who had been searching the nearby cells and surrounding returned to report. "Madam Amelia, we've detected a strong magical signature. It's full of dark magic," one of the Aurors reported. "Show me," Amelia ordered. They led her to the area where Voldemort had cast Protego Diabolica, and Moody was the first to react. "Amelia, I recognize this magic, it's Protego Diabolica," said Moody, his voice grim. "Are you sure, Moody?" Amelia asked, needing confirmation. "Yes, I'm certain. This is dark magic, but it's not fiend fire. This is Protego Diabolica, the most powerful defensive dark magic," Moody explained. Amelia rubbed her forehead, feeling a headache coming on as the threat of a new war loomed closer. "I need to report this to the press. I'm sure they've already caught wind of this incident considering they have previously caught on with any news that happen in Ministry of Magic," she said, then added to herself, "Maybe now Cornelius Fudge will finally accept that Voldemort has returned." Cornelius Fudge. True to what Amelia had said, news about the Azkaban breach quickly reached the Daily Prophet, as they had many moles inside the ministry. However, the story wouldn't be reported if the major shareholders decided to withhold the information or if someone powerful, like Malfoy, intervened to stop it. But this news is so big that even if they wanted to block it, it would still spread to others. Cornelius Fudge actually believed, to a small degree, that Voldemort had returned. He had seen Barty Crouch Jr., the dark mark on Snape's arm, and heard Sirius Black's confession regarding Peter Pettigrew, the real murderer. As a regular wizard who once admired Dumbledore, a small part of him 1% trusted the man. However, his ego, fear, and greed prevented him from accepting that he might be wrong. Fudge held on to the delusion that if he denied Voldemort's return, the Dark Lord would never appear before him. But today, more proof had landed on his desk because Azkaban had been breached and the Dementors had left the prison. "That must be Sirius Black," accused Cornelius Fudge. His intelligence suddenly dropped because he forgot that Sirius Black had been cleared of all charges and declared innocent. "Cornelius Fudge," said Amelia sternly, "Sirius Black has been exonerated and found not guilty." Surprised by Amelia's words, Cornelius finally remembered that Sirius had been found not guilty. I'm sorry, I forgot about that insignificant man, replied Cornelius Fudge dismissively. I don't care what you call him, but the Dark Lord return is real. We need to spread the news so we can act before he gathers more followers, said Amelia sternly. Return? You're delusional, Amelia, Cornelius scoffed. Delusional? No, you're the one who scared Dumbledore will take your position as Minister of Magic, retorted Amelia. You. Cornelius grabbed his wand and pointed it at her, but Amelia was faster, swiftly disarming him. Don't, Amelia half shouted. Ever point your wand at my face. Cornelius, pale with fear, almost lost control of himself. I'm sorry, but your claim that you know who has returned is just a story Dumbledore made up. Why? Isn't the proof all around us? Asked Amelia, incredulous. No, there's no solid proof that he's back, Fudge denied. Amelia fumed, finally deciding to leave. Cornelius Fudge was too terrified to accept the reality of Voldemort's return. Looking back, she thought, it's thanks to Dudley inviting me to meet him that I know the truth. Otherwise, my nephew might be in danger because I'm Voldemort's enemy. Chapter 55, Ravenclaw Diadem. Disclaimer, Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 55, Ravenclaw Diadem. He had to make sure no one followed him, not his friends, not Peeves, not even a house elf. He didn't want the plot from good turn to worst because of him. He had learned that lesson from Sirius Black. One decision could change everything. He had altered Sirius' status to innocent, and suddenly, almost everything had shifted. Dolores was in prison, and Lucius Malfoy had been hired as a professor. To be on the safe side, he needed to secure the other Horcrux before sharing anything with his cousin, Harry Potter. Upon entering the room of requirement, the room was dark, so he raised his wand and cast Lumos. The light was bright enough to illuminate the space, and he began searching every corner for the location of the diadem. It took almost half an hour before he finally stumbled upon Ravenclaw's diadem. This is it. Ravenclaw diadem, Dudley muttered with a smirk. As he neared the object and picked up the diadem, he suddenly felt hypnotized by the magic Voldemort had left inside it. If you seek knowledge, wear me on your head. I am the all-knowing object. Wear me on your head. I have the answer to everything. The whispers grew stronger, and even though Dudley had been prepared, he almost placed the diadem on his head. Unable to control his actions, he mentally commanded. Activate Gamer's mind. The whispers vanished, and his mind cleared immediately. Hey, this is more dangerous than I thought. I should have activated Gamer's mind before picking it up, Dudley thought. Not wanting to fall under the diadem's influence again, he placed it in his inventory. After that, he turned off Gamer's mind. Lucky, Dudley muttered, taking a deep breath. He opened his inventory and saw the cursed Ravenclaw diadem in one of the slots. Ding! Congratulations on capturing the second Horcrux. Reward talent point +1. Reward endurance +2. System, why are my rewards less valuable than before? Asked Dudley, clearly displeased with the latest rewards. The earlier rewards were special because you managed to defeat someone strong like Dumbledore. This time, the rewards are standard. At least it's still a reward, Dudley muttered, trying to console himself. His thoughts then shifted to Slytherin's secret chamber. He needed the basilisk fang to destroy the Horcrux. Ah, there are only a few Horcruxes left, said Dudley, counting them off. Hufflepuff Cup, Nagini, Harry Potter, and the diary. Suddenly, a realization hit him. System, I found the diary earlier, and it was destroyed. Why didn't I receive a reward? Dudley asked, confused. Because this body never personally found the diary. You must find the broken diary and hold it to claim your reward. You must also say specific words to activate it. For example, I found it, or this is the Horcrux. But earlier, when I found the locket, I didn't say anything, Dudley protested. That's because you entered the room with the intention of retrieving the Horcrux and successfully resisted the curse from the diadem. Dudley wasn't entirely satisfied with the system's explanation, but he knew there were more rewards to be claimed, so he decided to be patient. It seemed he would need to meet with Dumbledore to retrieve the diary and claim his reward. The next morning, Dudley went to the Great Hall and was eating with his friends the next morning when suddenly a group of owls entered, carrying newspapers. One of the owls dropped the Daily Prophet directly in front of Dudley. He had subscribed to the newspaper to stay informed about the Ministry and Voldemort's actions. He picked up the newspaper and gave some chips to the owl, which ate happily before flying away from Hogwarts. While his friends were still eating, Dudley opened the paper and read the headline. Dementor betray Ministry, Azkaban breached. By Rita Skeeter. In a shocking twist that has sent shockwaves through the wizarding world, the Dementors, once the Dark Guards of Azkaban, have betrayed the Ministry of Magic and fled the prison. Sources have confirmed that the Dementors, the terrifying creatures responsible for guarding the most dangerous criminals, have abandoned their posts and left Azkaban completely unguarded. Who's to blame? Many fingers point directly at Minister Cornelius Fudge, whose leadership is being severely questioned. This betrayal was inevitable, said one Ministry insider, who wishes to remain anonymous. Fudge's refusal to acknowledge the growing danger has brought us to this point. The breach has allowed a mass breakout of some of the most feared criminals in wizarding history. Among those who escaped are the notorious Lestrange family, Bellatrix, Rodolphus, and Robustan, all devoted followers of you-know-who. Also missing are Antonin Dolohov, Augustus Rookwood, and several other Death Eaters. Shockingly, Dolores Umbridge, the former senior undersecretary to the minister, was also among those freed. Umbridge, whose half-blood status was uncovered following her fall from power, had been imprisoned in Azkaban. As if the escape itself weren't enough, the Dementors have wreaked havoc before leaving, with multiple victims falling prey to the dreaded Dementor's kiss. The Ministry confirmed that 3 Aurors brave wizards who stood against the dark forces have been left dead after confronting the Dementors. Their names have been withheld out of respect for their families, but sources say that more might be affected because of the Dementors. In a final twist, Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, has come under fire for the breach. Bones should have resigned, one Ministry official commented. She said you-know-who had returned and blamed Fudge instead of herself. Calls for her resignation have begun to circulate, with some claiming her handling of the situation was nothing short of catastrophic by blaming it to the man who had died 14 years ago by the boy who lived. Despite the Ministry's attempts to control the narrative, the facts are becoming clearer by the day. We need a new people-y Ministry of Magic, not just some old lazy bones in there. Page 2, What is Dementor? Page 3, Dangerous Criminal. Reading the news left Dudley baffled. He had known that one day the Dementors would escape from Azkaban. In the original timeline, a similar incident occurred, but at that time, Sirius Black was framed as the one who released the Dementors and the Death Eaters. However, in this timeline, Sirius Black had been released and proven innocent. In conclusion, the news about the Azkaban breach was too big to cover up. There were many eyewitnesses, and worst of all, a half-blood victim. Later that day, the news spread across Britain. As a result, some wizards began to trust Dumbledore and the boy who lived again. Chapter 56, Chapter 56, Panic. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 56, Panic. The news of Death Eaters escaping from Azkaban sent a wave of panic through the majority of the students at Hogwarts. Their eyes were glued to the newspaper, the contents of which were utterly shocking. Just 2 years ago, Sirius Black had escaped from Azkaban, but it was later revealed that he was innocent. The reason he had managed to escape was that he was an animagus all along. This time, however, it wasn't just Death Eaters who had escaped. the Dementors had also betrayed the Ministry. This meant that Voldemort's return was real, and Harry hadn't been lying about it after all. There was further proof: an Auror who had been guarding Azkaban was attacked by Dementors. This was particularly alarming, as it was nearly impossible for Dementors to overpower someone capable of casting the Patronus charm. Some students who had ostracized Harry Potter now glanced at him with guilt in their eyes. They were beginning to believe his claims that the Dark Lord had truly returned. Even Dudley overheard their whispers about how Harry might have been telling the truth all along. "Remember, our hero Cedric died," said a sixth-year Hufflepuff. "If he really died because of some mission, why was the news covered up? Why didn't they tell us the real cause of his death?" "What did the news say about it?" asked another Hufflepuff. "It said that Cedric died due to an accident during the last task, but they didn't specify what kind of accident it was," replied the sixth-year Hufflepuff. In the original timeline, the Ministry of Magic had blamed Sirius Black, but they couldn't do the same this time because he had been proven innocent. Harry Potter. Today was Harry Potter's best day in over a month. After being ostracized by most of students in Hogwarts, only a few had believed him. But now everything changed after they are reading the latest news from Daily Prophet. Even students like Seamus Finnegan were apologizing for his earlier rude words. "Are you happy, mate?" Ron asked. "Yeah, it feels good not to have people pointing fingers and calling me a liar anymore," Harry replied with a smile. "Congrats, Harry," Ron said, smiling back. Suddenly, Hermione interrupted. "Harry, I think we need to do something," Hermione said, her expression serious. Harry looked at her, confused. "What do you mean, Hermione?" he asked. Ron chimed in. "What are you planning now, Hermione?" "I've been reading the news, and they're saying the Dementors have betrayed the Ministry. What's worse, most of the students don't know how to use the Patronus charm. They're vulnerable against those creatures," Hermione explained. Harry suddenly stood up. "You're right, Hermione. Harry, you're the only one in our year who can cast a Patronus. I think you should teach the rest of us," Hermione suggested. "I agree with Hermione," Ron added. "Professor Malfoy is useless. He hasn't taught us any spells in class." Professor Lucius Malfoy's reputation was in tatters. He had been instructed not to teach the students at Hogwarts anything, especially Harry Potter. Draco Malfoy, his son, faced ridicule every day after class. No wonder Draco Malfoy's a prat. His father can't even cast a proper spell. Malfoy's only power is his money. That's how he became a professor. What do you expect from someone who claimed to be under the Imperius Curse during the last war? And now this weakling is supposed to teach us defense against the dark arts. These words, repeated by students, weighed heavily on Draco, who had once been arrogant and pompous. Stressed beyond measure, he sought his father's help, but Lucius warned him. It was the Dark Lord's request that Lucius not teach anyone outside of Slytherin. Draco felt defeated. He had met Voldemort himself and knew the terrifying consequences that awaited him if he disobeyed. Before leaving, Lucius promised to teach only Slytherin students properly, ensuring Draco's dignity among his friends. Lucius himself despised the order Voldemort had given, but he had no choice. First, he hadn't sought out the Dark Lord during his downfall. Second, he had indirectly destroyed the diary that Voldemort had entrusted him to keep safe. And third, he had failed to retrieve the prophecy record. "Dark Lord. Tell me, why has this happened?" Voldemort asked. "My lord, it was because the news is too big, and no one could be blamed," replied the Death Eater. "Crucio." Voldemort cast the curse on the poor wizard. "Argh!" The man groaned in pain until Voldemort lifted the curse. Bellatrix suddenly entered, her once dirty, curly hair now washed and looking much cleaner than her time in Azkaban. However, her personality had worsened, and she had become even more obsessed with Voldemort. The years in Azkaban hadn't just made her face scrawny, it had also shaped her into someone entirely dependent on the Dark Lord. Whenever the Dementors approached, her only solace had been thoughts of Voldemort. She would tell herself that he would return and rescue her. That belief reached its peak the day the Dark Lord did return, and from that moment on, Bellatrix's obsession with him deepened. "Oh, my lord, let me deal with those people at the Daily Prophet," Bellatrix offered, blushing. "There is no need for you to do anything. You all spent over 14 years in Azkaban because you believed in me," said Voldemort. "This kind of task is not honorable for you." "Oh, my lord," Bellatrix smiled adoringly. "Where is Lucius?" Voldemort asked. "My lord, you instructed Lucius to become a professor at Hogwarts," the Death Eater reported. The words hit Voldemort like a splash of cold water. Usually, it was Lucius who handled the news and influenced the ministry, but Voldemort himself had placed him in Hogwarts. The real reason this news had blown up was because Lucius wasn't there to cover it up. Lucius had always been excellent at fabricating reasons and swaying the Daily Prophet. "What's happened to me?" thought Voldemort. "Has my time in that ghastly form dulled my intelligence?" Not wanting to appear weak, Voldemort decided to summon Lucius Malfoy. "Call Lucius here. I need to discuss something," Voldemort ordered. "Yes, my lord," replied one of the Death Eaters. Chapter 57, Chapter 57, Argus Filch. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 57, Argus Filch. The commotion caused by the Azkaban breakout sent the entire wizarding world of Britain into chaos. Even Dudley could see that his cousin, Harry Potter, was deeply engaged in conversations with others about the incident. It made sense to Dudley, after all, this was a good sign for Harry. People were finally starting to believe him about Voldemort's return. For Dudley, however, the situation was more complicated. He knew the plot of the story, and by interfering in it, he had already caused a butterfly effect. Releasing Sirius Black had altered events, and the plot line was now diverging from what should have happened. Despite the chaos, Dudley didn't want to get involved in the ongoing drama talk about something that had already been known. He decided to head to the room of requirement for more training. But on his way, he encountered someone who was being hated and ostracized by others. Argus Filch, the man who had been Squib and at the same time hold the position of the caretaker of Hogwarts. "What are you doing here?" asked Argus Filch. "Walking." "Why?" replied Dudley nonchalantly. Argus knew about Dudley, the student who had stayed off his radar for 3 years, except for last year when he suddenly drew attention due to some commotion he caused. Filch wanted to punish Dudley because he looked suspicious, wandering alone on the 7th floor. "Go back to your room," said Argus. "It's not yet 10 p.m., so we can still be outside the common room," replied Dudley. Argus could only sigh in frustration because he didn't have a valid reason to punish him. As Dudley watched Argus walk away, an idea sparked in his mind. "Argus Filch, the Squib," said Dudley suddenly, and unfortunately, Argus overheard him. Filch turned back, grabbed Dudley's collar, and demanded, "How do you know?" His voice was hoarse, filled with anger. Seeing Filch's reaction, Dudley recalled some details from the books he'd read, and he decided to offer an alternative. "I need your blood," said Dudley, which made the angry Argus suddenly go quiet and look terrified. "Headmaster," muttered Argus as he tried to run away from Dudley. But Dudley was quicker. He caught Argus's wrist before he could flee. "No, you cannot torture me," Argus said, his voice shaky. Judging by his reaction, Dudley figured that Filch had probably been tortured by his pure-blood family in the past, which might explain his fear. "Don't worry. I'm here to propose a deal, to make you a wizard," said Dudley. Argus's terrified eyes widened in shock. "You can turn me into a wizard?" Argus asked, needing confirmation. "My parents are Muggles," and I became a wizard. So I want to understand why magic chose me and not you, Dudley explained. By collecting your blood, I might discover the answer to turning someone into a wizard. Hearing this, Argus' hopes deflated. He had thought Dudley already had a potion that could turn him into a wizard, but the boy simply wanted to use him as an experimental subject. Argus looked at Dudley and saw that his eyes were clear, not calculating or cruel like those of the purebloods he had always dealt with. Living in the past had been hard. The Filch family was a pure bloodline in Britain, but Argus was the last descendant and unfortunately, not a wizard. For some reason, the Filch family could only have one child. They tried many potions, but Argus was their only offspring. When he turned 11 and didn't receive his Hogwarts letter, his parents were devastated. They performed countless experiments trying to activate the wizard blood in him, but they eventually had to accept that he would never be a wizard. Those experiments left him traumatized, which is why he had tried to flee when Dudley asked for his blood. "You just need my blood and won't force me into any experiments?" asked Argus cautiously. "If the potion is ready, I might need you to drink it because you'll be the only subject in my experiment," Dudley replied honestly. Argus hesitated, but the trauma still lingered. "It's up to you. I might be the only one offering you this chance, so think carefully," said Dudley, turning to leave. "I'll do it." "Take my blood," replied Argus. Dudley smiled when Argus agreed. He had countless ideas on how to activate the cells in him, but he lacked someone willing to be the subject of his experiments. He couldn't let his parents drink the potion until it was confirmed to be safe and guaranteed to work with 100% success. Voldemort POV. "How is your work at Hogwarts?" asked Voldemort to Lucius. "It is going well, my lord. I don't teach the Mudbloods, I only teach Slytherin students privately," replied Lucius Malfoy. Hearing this, Voldemort was slightly pleased. At least Lucius was doing his job well and ensuring that the Slytherin students were receiving a proper education. "Lucius, I have a new task for you," said Voldemort, raising his wand toward a newspaper. The paper floated toward Lucius. He grabbed it and read the headline. "My lord, do you want me to do something about this news?" asked Lucius. "Yes, can you handle it?" replied Voldemort. Lucius hesitated, not wanting to risk Voldemort's wrath if the mission failed. "I cannot stop it, my lord," said Lucius, quickly adding when he noticed Voldemort's eyes narrowing in anger. "But I can divert the attention of the wizarding world to something else." "Tell me your plan, Lucius," said Voldemort. "The news has spread widely, so it is impossible to stop the rumors among the citizens. But I can silence Fudge and create a bigger story to shift their focus," explained Lucius. Voldemort didn't fully grasp the idea, so Lucius continued. "For example, last year, after our attack, the news focused heavily on the incident. But when the Triwizard Tournament was announced, people stopped talking about the Death Eater attacks during Quidditch tournament," said Lucius. "Good idea. Do it, Lucius," said Voldemort. Suddenly, a silver figure appeared before Voldemort. "Hello, Tom. You were really foolish to release your Death Eaters. Now everyone knows you've returned," said the patroness. Voldemort became enraged and asked Lucius one last time. "Is this voice really that of Dudley Dursley, Harry Potter cousin?" "100% his voice," replied Lucius. Chapter 58, Squib DNA. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 58, Squib DNA. Argus Filch was widely hated by the students of Hogwarts. There wasn't a single student who liked him, not even among the Slytherins. This was because he was always looking for faults in students and eager to give out harsh punishments to those he caught. But one day, some students noticed that Argus Filch didn't seem to treat Dudley Dursley the same way. In fact, there even seemed to be a hint of respect towards him. The incident occurred when Dudley and the Weasley twins were caught outside their common room at 10:30 p.m. Filch managed to capture them, but then something unexpected happened. He let Dudley go, allowing him to return to his common room. This infuriated the Weasley twins, who protested that Dudley should be interrogated too. Hearing this, Argus had no choice but to release all the students he had captured. However, there was no solid proof of the incident because it only happened once, and the only witnesses were Gryffindor students, who had a reputation for being pranksters. DNA. A Muggle's DNA is different from that of Squib and Wizards. Muggle DNA looks like a twisted ladder and is colorless, while a Wizard DNA is different, possessing properties that emit light when exposed to magic. The stronger the light, the more powerful the magic inside the body. Dudley had tested 3 samples of DNA, his own, Harry and Hermione. His DNA shone the brightest, Harry's came second, and Hermione's was the dimmest. He didn't have pure-blood DNA to analyze, but according to his hypothesis, pure-blood DNA should emit the least light, meaning their magic is not as potent. Based on his findings, he classified the magic within their bodies. For himself, he measured 100% magic, Harry at 87%, and Hermione at 75%. He hypothesized that pure-blood wizards likely fall between 50 to 60%. If their magic is below 50%, they would likely become squibs. Dudley realized his 100% magic was due to the system, unlike normal wizards, who receive their power at birth. Argus Filch DNA, being that of a pure-blood squib, had the same structure as a wizard's DNA but did not emit light, meaning his body couldn't use magic, even though he was born from a witch's womb. Looking at the results, Dudley could only shake his head. It was impossible to make his mother Petunia Dursley become a witch, as the structure of her DNA was different from both squibs and wizards. He had to consider other ways to help her. If a muggle consumed a wizard's potion, it would react differently. Some potions, like blood-replenishing potions, would work fine, but others, such as Skele-Gro, would cause harmful reactions and be unsuitable for muggles. For Argus, however, Dudley had a potion that could help him. It had never existed in this world before, but the success rate was only 30%. Hermione POV. After the Triwizard Tournament, Hermione braced herself for the return of Voldemort, the notorious killer who had hunted Muggle-borns in the past. Although she didn't tell her parents anything, not wanting to worry them, she was always on guard with her wand during the summer holidays, afraid of a potential Death Eater attack. She had read about their past actions, the Cruciatus Curse and other unspeakable horrors they inflicted on Muggle families. However, her worries began to ease when her first Daily Prophet arrived that summer. The newspaper had revoked Dumbledore's claim, even calling him senile. With how quickly her mind worked, she realized she was still safe because Voldemort and the Death Eaters would likely lay low for a while before deciding to strike again. This didn't shock her, unlike Harry, who was taken aback when he discovered the Ministry didn't believe him. He had told her about names like Malfoy, Crabbe, Goyle, and other purebloods that he saw in the graveyard with Voldemort, names of people who held influential positions in the Ministry of Magic. These individuals could cover up the truth and paint people like Dumbledore as senile and Harry as an attention seeker and liar. Then came Dudley Dursley's birthday, which she attended with her parents. Seeing Dudley, who was also Muggle-born with both Muggle parents, she realized he was an even bigger target than her because he is Harry Potter cousin. Who was Dudley? Her rival, the one she had always tried to beat in exams, the antisocial man who always topped the class and received outstanding in every subject. But this year, Dudley had changed. He was no longer the withdrawn person who, when asked 10 questions, would only respond with one answer. Instead, he had started calling her by her first name. Before, it was always Ms. Granger, but now it was just Hermione. Curious about the change, she asked him why. His response? Because of Voldemort. If I had been there during Voldemort's attack, I might have been able to change something. Fast forward, and she saw Dudley carrying a large stack of books in the library. "Dudley," said Hermione. Dudley looked up of his book and saw her. "Hermione, fancy seeing you here. What are you doing with all these books?" Hermione asked, her eyes scanning the titles Dudley was holding. "Alchemy?" she asked, surprised. "Yes, I want to create a device so a muggle can use magic," replied Dudley. "What?" Hermione half shouted. "SHH, Hermione, you almost got me kicked out of the library," Dudley teased. "No, I mean, do you really think you can create a device like that?" she asked, still in disbelief. "The chances of success are only 30%, Dudley said casually. Hermione glanced over the notebook Dudley had been using for his research. "Can I read it?" "Yes, you can," Dudley said, passing the notebook to her. Hermione took the book and began reading. While she was engrossed, Dudley watched her, noticing her eyes widen in shock. After about 10 minutes, she closed the book and looked at him. "Did you really create a potion for squibs?" "Yes, I did. But it's never been tested on an actual squib," Dudley replied. He then pulled out 2 potions that didn't exist in the wizarding world. The first was a focus potion, and the second was a maxima potion, and handed them to Hermione. She examined the tightly sealed containers, finding the mixtures inside unfamiliar. How did you manage to create something like this?" Hermione asked, astonished. Chapter 59, Chapter 59, Potion. Disclaimer: Harry Potter and all of its characters belong to J.K. Rowling. I own nothing but the original characters I make. Chapter 59, Potion. The caretaker of Hogwarts, Argus Filch. Dudley called from 20 meters away. Argus, hearing someone call his name, turned around to see who it was. His usually frowning face brightened slightly when he recognized Dudley. "Dudley Dursley," Argus said, a bit excited, then he noticed someone beside Dudley. "Who's this?" "She's one of my friends, Hermione Granger," Dudley introduced. "You told her?" Argus Filch said angrily, his previously happy face turning grim upon realizing that his secret had been exposed. "Yes, she knows you're a squib," Dudley responded, seemingly unconcerned by Argus's anger. Hermione sensed something was wrong with Argus. "You told her I'm a squib?" Argus repeated, his anger flaring as he moved towards Dudley, ready to strike. Suddenly, Dudley pulled something from his pocket. "This is a maxima potion," Dudley said. Argus, who had been about to hit him, stopped in his tracks, his eyes now fixated on the potion. Can I really become a wizard?" Argus asked, tears welling up in his eyes. "This is my first product. I need to test it on you, but there's only a 30% chance you could become a wizard," Dudley replied. "Are you willing? A 30% chance is better than staying stuck as a squib." "Give me that potion," Argus Filch said, determined. Flashback, Maxima Potion Dash. In the game, this potion makes magic at least twice as strong, Dudley had said, staring at the potion. Will it work the same way in this world? Only one way to find out, Dudley had replied before opening the cap and drinking the potion. He felt it immediately, the magic surging wildly through his body. From his mouth, it coursed to his heart, then spread throughout his body. The magic was more potent and powerful than ever before, and he could feel every bit of it. "Please make this room suitable for using a Bombarda spell," Dudley said 3 times before the room of requirement shifted into a larger space, complete with a practice dummy. Without wasting time, Dudley channeled the magic into his wand and cast Bombarda toward the dummy. In an instant. Boom! Though Dudley had expected it, the spell effect was at least 3 times more powerful than usual. "Ha ha ha, it looks like potions from the game work in this world," Dudley exclaimed. He then took a needle and drew his blood, checking it under a microscope. To his amazement, his DNA glowed twice as brightly as before he drank the potion. His DNA would light up whenever he channeled magic into his bloodstream. The only question left was how long the potion's effects would last. In the game, the effect only lasted 20 seconds before diminishing. But now, 3 minutes had already passed. Dudley kept checking his wristwatch. 5 minutes turned into 10, and finally, at the 20-minute mark, the surge of magic stopped, and his body returned to normal. Looks like 20 minutes is the maximum, Dudley noted. Focus potion. Can the effect last longer? Dudley wondered, pleased that the effect lasted more than 20 seconds in this world, though it would be even more valuable if it could last longer. He scanned the other ingredients in the room of requirement, and his gaze landed on the focus potion. In the game, focus potions reduced the cooldown of abilities. For example, after using the Conf Ringo spell, there would be a cooldown period before it could be used again. However, in this universe, spells had no cooldowns and worked differently. For instance, the Incendio spell in the game created a ring of fire around the caster, but here, it behaved more like a flamethrower. Curious, Dudley decided to drink the focus potion to see its effect. He opened the lid and drank it, but after 10 seconds, he felt nothing. Is this potion worthless? Dudley muttered. He tried using a spell to confirm, but perhaps because his body had already opened all its pores, allowing magic to flow freely, he didn't notice any additional effects from the focus potion. What if I try drinking another Maxima potion? Will it have any added effects? Dudley mused. All right, he said to himself and drank another Maxima potion. Once again, the surge of energy and magic enveloped his body. The power he had felt before returned, flowing through him. He cast several spells, but the effects were the same as before, no noticeable difference in the volume of magic or the potency of the spells. Maxima potion alone is enough. There's no need for the focus potion, Dudley concluded. He then sat down with his notebook and began documenting the effects of the potion. Time passed 1 hour, 2 hours, but Dudley didn't notice until he finished writing down all his theories and formulas. He glanced at his watch and saw that 2 hours and 30 minutes had passed. Something clicked in his mind. Wait a minute. Why is my body still producing more magic? The effect should have expired, Dudley said in disbelief. To confirm his suspicion, he cast another spell, and the power still felt like it was under the Maxima potion's influence. He watched his watch, waiting until the effect finally wore off. 30 minutes later, the power diminished, and the effect was gone. So that means, the focus potion can make the effects of other potions last longer, Dudley realized, smiling. This was a new discovery. If he used a polyjuice potion, it would likely last much longer. If 20 minutes could be extended to 180 minutes, the polyjuice potion might last up to 9 hours, and the best part was, no one else in this world had a focus potion. Back to Filch. This is the Maxima potion. Are you absolutely sure you want to be the tester? Dudley asked one last time. I'm sure, give it to me, Argus replied. All right, Dudley said, handing the potion to Argus. Hermione glanced at the potion. She had read about its effects in Dudley's research book and knew all about the Maxima potion. There were no side effects for wizards, but for a squib, this was the first test. Mr. Filch, are you really sure? Hermione voiced her concern. I know it's just a test, but all my life, I've wanted to be a wizard, Argus said, his voice shaking, on the verge of tears.